And I think I'll start our meeting off at 7:02. And good evening. Welcome to the Planning Board meeting for the 17th of February 2021. As a preliminary matter, my name is Pete Pecos. I'm the chair of the Newbury Planning Board. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Planning Board members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Larry Murphy.
Here.
Thank you, Larry. George Morse.
Here.
George. Leslie Matthews.
Here.
Leslie. Woody Knight.
Here.
Thank you, Woody. Mary Stone.
Present.
Thank you, Mary. Town staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Martha Taylor.
Here.
Thank you, Martha. Emily Noble.
Here.
Thank you, Emily. Town council, when I call your name, please refer in the affirmative. Brian Winter.
Brian Winter is present.
Anticipated speakers, presenters on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. Anthony Guba.
Here.
Thank you, Anthony. Stephen Sawyer.
Don't see him yet.
Okay. Jill Mann.
Here.
No. Mark DePiero.
Here.
Thank you, Mark. Chris York.
I'm here.
Thank you, Chris. Kevin Whitney.
He's here.
Okay. John Colantoni.
Here, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good evening. This is February 17th, 2021, open meeting of the Newbury Planning Board. It is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12th, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order supersedes the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for the meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Planning Board is convening by video conference via Zoom as posted on the Planning Board's agenda, which can be found on the Planning Board section of the town's website, in which identifies how the public may join. You may join us by going to http://zoom.us and entering meeting ID 832-7141-3056 or by calling 929-205-6099 and entering the meeting ID number when prompted. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference. Meeting materials were provided to the board members prior to the meeting for review. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak and, if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention after you have been called upon. Before we turn to the first agenda item, I'd like to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, as the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will go down the list of board members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, question, or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except board members and staff, please remember to mute your phone, *6, to toggle to mute or unmute, or on the computer, the mute button when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until I yield the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If board members wish to engage in discussions with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. With regards to public comment, there will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during the public hearings. After board members have spoken, I will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will seek questions and comments through the Zoom raise hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, click on the participants button in the menu below the photo gallery at the bottom of the Zoom screen. Hover your cursor over the area if you don't see it. A list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of the participant area, you will see an option to click the raise hand button. Please ensure that your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself by using the more function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in the Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your key. I will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they are listed. The system lists in order who first raised their hand. The participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address, and then ask a question or make a comment. I will give the applicant, participant, or his or her representatives the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you've been given the floor for your questions. I will then continue down the list of the raise hand function column and again afford the participant, applicant, or representative an opportunity to speak. Should there be any physical or electronic submittal of questions or concerns, they will be noted for the record. And again, the participant, applicant, representative will be afforded the opportunity to speak if the issues raised have not been addressed. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call. Okay, I think that concludes our opening remarks. So let me drop this screen down and let's start with our agenda. We don't have any submissions or appearances, Martha, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and so we have a couple public hearings, folks. We have 3 public hearings that are set to at 7:15. And I'm going to try again to keep our public hearings to 30 to 45 minutes, courtesy to the applicants, and try to keep everything moving on our agenda, as well as to public participation and our board members. Since we have a couple minutes, would it make sense, Martha, to try to go to the definitive subdivision plan performance guarantee and endorsement for 108 Main Street?
We could try to do that since Mr. Colantoni is here, and otherwise he may have to wait for quite a long time.
Okay, so why don't you kick us off with that?
So as the board may recall, the 108 Main Street definitive subdivision plan decision was approved some time back, and the appeal period has run out. So Mr. Colantoni is proposing to do a performance covenant for his performance guarantee. So tonight would be a vote from the board to approve that, and the basic form of that was forwarded to the board, and a vote to endorse the subdivision plan. And probably it would make sense to have a vote to authorize the chair to sign both of those documents.
Okay, so do you want to take those in 3 separate motions, Martha?
I would say, so the first would be whether the board members have had a chance to review the covenant itself and are comfortable with it. It's pretty much the standard format.
Okay, let me just run down.
Yes.
Larry, you comfortable, sir?
I am.
Great. George?
Yes.
Great. Leslie?
Yes.
Great. Woody?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Okay, then I would entertain a motion for that first phase.
I would so move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Discussion, Larry.
None.
Discussion, George.
None.
Discussion, Leslie.
No.
Discussion, Woody.
No.
Discussion, Mary.
No.
Okay, on the question, George. I'm sorry, Larry. How say you?
Yes.
Okay, George, how say you?
Yes.
Leslie, how say you?
Yes.
Woody, how say you?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
There's in favor. Okay, on our second step, Martha.
So the second would be a vote to endorse the definitive subdivision plan.
Okay, Larry, is there a motion, do you think, for that?
I move to endorse the definitive subdivision plan.
Thank you, sir. Is there a second?
Second.
Leslie, is there any discussion? Larry, discussion?
No.
George, discussion?
No.
Leslie, discussion?
No.
Woody, discussion?
No.
Mary, discussion?
No.
Okay, on the question, Larry?
Yes.
Great. George?
No.
George, is that no in the vote?
Oh, no, yes on the vote. I thought there was
Thank you.
another question.
Great. Leslie on the vote?
Yes.
Woody on the vote?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Chair's in favor as well. Okay, third step, Martha?
Would be a vote to authorize the chair to sign both documents.
Is there a motion?
Motion. Fine.
All right, I think Leslie made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. On the motion, any discussion, Larry?
No.
George, any discussion?
No.
Leslie, discussion? Woody, any discussion?
No.
Mary, any discussion? Mary, any discussion?
Oh, no.
Okay, great. On the motion, Larry, how say you?
Yes.
Great. George, how say you?
Yes.
Thank you. Leslie, how say you?
Yes.
Woody, how say you?
Yes.
Mary?
Yes.
Chair's in favor. Okay, anything else with that, Martha?
No, that's it. So we'll just need to coordinate. Well, I actually need to get the document from John.
Okay.
And the plan, and then we can coordinate getting it signed.
All right, John, do you have any other questions, sir?
No, just want to thank the board and also Martha and town council for helping coordinate with my attorney on the wording and everything. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay, very good, John. Good luck with the
Thank you.
project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right, we have 2 minutes, Martha. Can we do anything in 2 minutes?
Good question.
Cappuccino?
No. Let's see if we can actually be productive here for 2 minutes.
There we go. I really don't have anything for the planning director's report tonight, so.
Okay. Is there anything from the select board?
Let's see, there was conversation on Newburyport Turnpike project. Let's see, also again on Plum Island. And those pretty much the things that would pertain to us.
Okay, great. Larry, anything from ZBA?
Oh, their regular monthly meeting is tomorrow night, and they're taking up the 40B again, once again,
Okay.
off Pearson Drive. It may be old news now, but it might be of interest to the board members if you don't know that Seacoast Canine appealed the ZBA's determination that their use was not a customary home occupation. So we'll see where that goes.
Okay.
Otherwise, that's it.
Okay. Martha, do you have anything from MVPC?
The commissioners meeting is tomorrow, so I'll have something next time.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. I can start a little bit on conservation. First thing was the buoy was successfully, oh, hold on, let me minimize this. The buoy was successfully removed from the beach this morning. That was kind of put together very quickly by Bill Holt with the chief of police and Coast Guard. So that was very good that was able to get off the beach and not be a hazard any longer. There was discussion last night. We're bumping in 7:15. So I'm going to hold the rest of conservation until that time, and I want to go right into our agenda for starting our public hearing since we're right at 7:15. So let's see. We have 3 public hearings. The first I'm going to start with is, let me get my agenda back up. I'm popping between screens quickly. So the first is Ale Prime. And so that is going to be Ale Prime gas station and convenience store with coffee shop and tent with drive-through window operation, 23 Central Street map R20 lot 28. Applicant is Ale Prime Energy, care of Anthony Guba. A PE owner is R&E Realty Trust, Ronald and the Pearson trustees. This is coming from 2021. So this is a site plan review application and a special permit application for gas station through operation. I'm going to make note that starting this discussion that Larry Murphy has recused himself from the proceedings and that is participating in the special permit. I also have a note here that we do not have any from the applicant since our last session of the public hearing held on January 6th. Is that correct, Martha?
That's correct.
Okay. So I'm going to ask Tony Guba if he has any new materials or informational to present to the board. Tony, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, I'd like to if, have a minute.
Sure.
At the last meeting, or maybe the meeting before, there was a quick photo of a station's lighting and another Dunkin' Donuts architecture. And I did submit something regarding that lighting, and I don't recall if it was since the last meeting or the one before that. So there should be something in there basically saying that the lighting that we're proposing to use is exactly the same as was in that photo that you indicated was something that you'd like us to try to replicate. Just doing a quick review, I'd like to just go through. I know that one of the things that you're looking at doing is starting to go through a draft decision. And I'd like to just cover some of the highlights of the project before you do that, so you can consider that when you're going through that process. We are proposing a permitted use. The use that's there now is non-conforming, but we will be changing that to a permitted use. We're not requesting any waivers. We're not requesting any variances. We exceed all the zoning dimensional requirements for setbacks, parking, lot coverage, snow storage, signage. We meet or exceed all of the town and state stormwater requirements for a project that's being classified as new development instead of redevelopment. We meet or exceed all the requirements for the underground storage tanks, the fueling facility, the fire suppression system on the self-serve end of it. We're not located in any buffer of any wetland or any resource area. We've addressed and satisfied the engineering and traffic peer reviews. We do have support of all the immediately abutting property owners. We've made numerous revisions to the plan since we first submitted it, changing the driveway configuration from two-way driveways to one-way driveways that are smaller. We agreed to realign the Central Court intersection with Central Street because there was concern that right now it's not at 90 degrees. So we've agreed to make that change so that it would be 90 degrees. We've agreed to move the curbing and adjust the striping in Central Street to provide a bypass lane. That's also going to widen the shoulders on both sides for the use of bicyclists and other people that are traveling on the road. We've added sidewalk from the property to Fruit Street, including ADA curb ramps at both ends. We've changed the roof line from the flat roof line to a New England style pitched roof, which was, I believe, a lot like the architecture that was shown for that Dunkin' that I think is in Georgetown. We changed the siding on the building, so it includes clapboard and has more of a much more of a New England style to it. We increased the landscape plantings. We made revisions to the plan to satisfy concerns that the fire department had. We revised the lighting so that it meets all the town requirements and that it, as I said at the start, is similar to the lighting that seemed something that was shown in that photo as to what was done. I guess that was probably some station in California. We added a bike rack that was proposed, that was suggested by the traffic peer review. We changed the traffic flow around the building to one way. We made numerous technical revisions that were needed to satisfy all the peer review comments. And we continue to be willing to discuss additional changes that the board might want, specific changes, except the changes that we've already considered and reconsidered in depth regarding moving the fueling operation to the rear of the property or accessing the property in the rear from Fruit Street, which we just really can't do. And that's basically it. We don't have anything really new because I don't recall any specific suggestions or comments that we could address that we haven't already addressed as part of the changes that we've already made. And I appreciate the time to let me go through that.
Thank you, Tony. I just want to ask any board members if they have any questions or comments from the applicant on the project at this time. So I'm just going to kind of run down. George, do you have any questions or comments at this time?
Yeah, one of the questions I have is the fence that you have goes all the way around the property? It is totally fenced in?
We can do that, but no, right now we're only showing, I'm not sure exactly how far down on the east side. We're showing fencing and landscaping, I believe, in that area only, and then around the trash enclosure and around the propane tanks. But the back side and the side facing west, we're not showing any fencing. There's
Okay, the only
landscaping,
reason I
there's
asked-
screening that way.
What we asked about is personnel being able to exit the property quickly in case of a fire or other emergency, and clearly they can if there's no fence in the back. That's fine.
Oh, yeah, there's no fencing anywhere on the west side or in the back. Yep.
Oh, well,
Anything else, George?
not right now, thank you.
Thanks very much, George. Leslie, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I don't.
Thank you, Leslie. Woody, do you have any questions at this time?
No, I don't.
Thank you. Mary, do you have any questions at this time?
I do not.
Okay, great. Let's see. Martha, do you have any new information or any emails or letters since our last public hearing?
And I do want to apologize in a sense. I did get an email from Tony after the last session of the public hearing. I misunderstood. I thought it was just sort of a comment and that some plans were going to be submitted because he did talk about the possibility of making some changes to lighting or other modifications might be made. So there was nothing in a plan form that was submitted, but we did have that email.
Okay.
There were a couple of comments that came in afterwards. I'll just try to pull the list up here. Oops, it seems not to have worked, sorry. So this is saying my screen sharing is paused, so I'm assuming that means that you can't see anything.
Not yet.
Correct.
It says it's starting.
So it seems not to be doing anything. So let me try this again. I apologize.
I'll get the door.
Okay. Yeah, I'm still getting a stop. Screen sharing is paused, stop share. And unfortunately, I can't seem to. Well, maybe I can just read the names. We did get an email from Christopher Murphy, the last meeting, which I think was sent to the board ahead of time. The one that's come in since is from David Melchionda, 40 Fatherland Drive, on the 7th of January.
All right. And those are posted?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right. So at this time, I'm going to ask for public comments. So what we're looking for is new comments or new information that could assist the board in this process. So we're looking for new comments or new information. And I'll let Martha kind of direct our people as they ask their questions. So who do we have first, Martha?
Okay, Kathy Sperling raised her hand first.
Kathy, name and address, please.
Kathy Sperling, 10 Parker River Drive in Byfield. And we are the development directly across from the 23 Central Street project in question. Basically, I have nothing really new to say, but you allowed Anthony Gupta to really summarize what he's done to date and where he's at. So basically, I just would like to say, as I've said the last couple of meetings, you have over 200 people on a petition. You have several abutters who are against the project, even though Mr. Gupta says he has the immediate abutters who are for it. There are several abutters who are against the project. As was said in the last meeting, although the lighting may be in compliance, the cars and trucks going in and out, their headlights alone will traverse into the neighborhood. The building, we still have issues about it. We still think it's too big for the site. We understand that the site has requirements, so we'd like another project, but not necessarily this gas station. And the traffic issue that was brought up last time, there is a do not pass sign as you come off the exit. And according to Mr. Maramaldi, I believe it was put in by the state. So if the state has a do not pass sign, I just don't understand how we can allow an extension or widening of the road. So I appreciate everyone's listening to the neighbors and the community at large, and hopefully your decision will be in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your participation. Martha, who do we have next?
Next, we have Christopher Morris,
Okay, Christopher, you're up next. And if you could do name and address, please.
and you need to unmute yourself, please.
Hi, my name is Christopher Morris. I live at 9 Central Court. I wasn't at the last meeting, but I did sit down with my wife and spend a while watching the entire meeting. A couple of things that came up. Actually, in this meeting, Mr. Gupta just said that they would widen the road to include a bypass lane. It does not include a bypass lane. It will not be striped as a separate lane. All you're doing is making it wide enough so that if people choose to drive off the side of the road to go around, they can. It is not a bypass lane because there would have to be a turn lane to permit a bypass lane. Also, where you're asking people to go off the road and drive out, there is a bus stop directly at the end of the street at Central Court. When I drive out to go to work, I see students waiting for the bus. So you're asking people to swing wide, go around a car towards students waiting for a bus. I just don't think that's completely safe in any way, shape, or form. The other thing is, in that traffic study, I didn't hear anything about these students going in there to get coffee before going to school and then having to come out and actually turn left through a lane of people that are waiting to turn into the gas station while everybody on Parker River Drive and Central Court are trying to get out to go to work. I don't think that traffic study, from what I read in it and what I've heard, really took into account all of the traffic going to school. And their peak hour of 8 to 9 is completely inaccurate. The peak hour is 7 to 9 because people leave to go to, most people get to work around 8, which means they're leaving our street and going down the street prior to 8. And the high school is also prior to 8. So I don't have an acceptable amount of additional accidents and injuries. My acceptable more accidents and injuries is 0. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christopher. We appreciate your comments and participating in the process. Thank you. Martha, who do we have next?
Next is Elizabeth Woodworth.
Okay. Hi, Elizabeth, you have the floor.
It's actually Avery Woodworth, 19 Downfall Road.
Hey.
I'd like a point of clarification because Mr. Gupta said that it's a permitted use. I believe it's a special permit by default because it's a gas station. Is that not correct?
This is a site plan review and special permit.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to clarify that. The other thing is, I'm just going to be short and sweet, and I'm going to say that if you look at this criteria for a special permit, I believe it doesn't meet the criteria in a favorable manner. There's already one serving our neighborhood. The traffic flow is going to be increased substantially. Safety is going to be decreased, and it will be injurious and obnoxious to the neighborhood. So I'm not sure why we're still even entertaining plans. So that's all I have to say, and thank you all for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks very
Take
much.
care.
We appreciate you participating and being here tonight. Do we have any more public comments or questions for new information or comments?
Chris Murphy.
Hi.
Name
Thank
and
you.
address,
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes. Chris, name and
Okay.
address, please.
Christopher Murphy, 9 Parker River Drive. I don't have a lot of time, nor do I have any new information because I emailed after the last meeting that sort of making my case, and I trust the planning board read my email. I just want to update that the petition of the folks that are against the project is north of 275 people now. I think it's 277, and I'm happy to email Martha the list. That's all.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. And for your little cohort in the back that's helping out in the project.
Yeah, it's bedtime. I have to go. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Martha, do we have anyone else?
I don't see any raised hand symbols. I'm just going to scan the screen to see if I see anybody waving,
I'm doing the same thing. And
which I
doing the thing.
don't.
Okay. All right. Let me just now turn to the board to see if there are any additional comments or questions. So I'm going to start with George. Any additional comments or questions?
Yeah, I do. I guess the question I have, can the board on its own authorize the widening of Central Street, realigning Central Court with Central Street, and and authorize putting in new sidewalks? I think Martha probably has that answer for you.
Let me direct that question to Martha then, George. Thank you.
I think certainly we would need to be coordinating with the DPW on that. I don't know whether there would need to be any permissions from the select board as well, quite honestly. So I don't have a complete answer, I'm afraid.
Does that answer your question, George?
The select board would not be necessary for approval.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That's why I raised the question, but I think that's worth investigating.
Would that be a question that we could ask town council?
Town council.
I'm happy to chime in on that, Mr. Chairman. I'm not familiar with the layout of the road or this specific road, but typically if it's going to be widened or the layout's going to be increased, or if the striping or other usage of that is going to be altered, you would generally need the select board's approval for that. So it would, at one point or another in the process, it may go through them.
Thank you, Brian. All right, George, does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, any other questions, sir? George, any other questions? Or are you good?
I'm good right now.
Thank you, thank you. Woody, do you have any additional questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you, Woody. Leslie, do you have any additional questions or comments?
No, I do not.
Okay, thank you. Mary, do you have additional questions or comments?
Am I allowed to ask Mr. Gruba a direct question?
Sure thing.
Mr. Gruba, could you please address the continuing issue of the size of your proposed plan in relation to the space available? It seems to come up quite a bit that you have a lot going on, a lot of activities that are being pursued in this one area. And I wondered if you could just speak to that issue, please.
Okay, so that includes a number of issues. From a zoning perspective, one of the safeguards that the town has to try to control overuse of a piece of property is lot coverage. And for this zone, we're allowed 50% lot coverage, and we're not even using 20%. So we're well under the lot coverage requirement as far as buildings. We meet the parking requirement. That's usually another problem. If you overuse a piece of property, that the use on the property ends up getting out of the property bounds onto the street, backing to the street. And we've shown that the parking that we meet, in fact, we have more parking than is required under the bylaw, and definitely more than we think we need for our operation. And we also have much more queue space for the drive-through than is typically found to be the maximum for that kind of operation. We're proposing a number of fuel dispensers, not for any other reason, but to make the operation more efficient and reduce any possible queues that you would end up having at the fueling operation, and make it more efficient for people to just come in, get out without having to wait. So from that standpoint, I think we're not overusing the property by a number of different technical measures. We're not using we meet all the setbacks. We're not asking for any variances. So I'm not sure. There may be a concern, and I understand, and I always understand. I mean, having done this type of work for decades, it's rare that I've been involved with a commercial development of any kind that doesn't come up with some people not favoring it and coming out in opposition. So I'm sensitive to that, and I understand that. It doesn't mean it's a bad project necessarily. It means possibly that some of the neighbors don't like it. And I'm sorry about that. But I don't think the property is being overused. The traffic study, both our consultant and the town's consultant that reviewed the traffic study said that the traffic levels that were going to be generated were favorable. That, yeah, there would be an increase in traffic. There's always an increase in traffic with any kind of development. But the levels would not deteriorate any of the level of service at any of the intersections or on the roadway itself to less than the level of service that's there now, or to a level that would be considered unacceptable. A comment that someone made earlier about the left-ins and left-outs. We originally did our traffic study with a much stronger apportionment of the traffic staying on Central Street and heading east from the site, and not as much coming from the highway. We revised that because of the town's peer review that said we really should apportion it differently based on the fact of the proximity of the highway off-ramps. So we changed it. But in our initial study, our study did look at it as a number of the traffic coming through and then heading east. And that study was also, didn't show any unfavorable. Obviously, there's an impact, as I said, but it's not an unfavorable impact based on traffic technical standards.
Okay. Mary, was your question answered?
I'm fine right now, but I'll probably pursue it later when I know a little bit more. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Kuba.
Okay. Martha, I just want to make sure that I have all public comment in. Did Karen Berry just pop in and requesting to make a comment on this?
She did a minute ago, yes.
Okay. Karen, if you wouldn't mind, name and address, and what we're looking for is we're looking for new information or new comments to help the board in its current process.
My concern is it has to do with the traffic.
I'm sorry, Karen, if you could just name and address, please. For the
Oh,
record.
I'm sorry, Karen Berry, 12 Parker River Drive in Byfield. We spent almost the entire last open meeting discussing the traffic issues, the concerns, the worries. And tonight, Mr. Cooper made a comment about widening the road and sidewalks, and it concerns me that he would bring up an issue like that without verifying any of the facts and how this would be done, and the permits that would be that he would have to get. And I agree with Christopher that it's just not safe. And if there's a no pass sign, why would the road be widened? And it all has to do with the traffic, but still that new information is concerning to me that he was stating facts that really aren't facts, because there's some issues with permits and who has to give the go-ahead and everything. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Karen, and we do appreciate your participating tonight. So just to get back, I was kind of going through the board members to see if there are any additional comments. George, I got you. Woody, I got you. Leslie, I got you. And Barry, I just got you. So, okay. Just for kind of a recap, after our last meeting, the board reviewed the site plan review decision criteria. We went through it and board members were polled to help give a sense for town council and for planning to start a draft for a site plan review and for a special permit decision based on the sense of the board. Council, where are we with that process?
Mr. Chairman, and again, I neglected to introduce myself the last time, but for people participating virtually, Brian Winter. At the board's request and instruction, I reviewed the materials and the board's sort of straw poll or sense of the meeting from the last evening on this matter and started a working draft. I have got it to the point where I could share it with Ms. Taylor, and she's provided some substantive comments. So at this point, it's still a work product and something in process. And it's really driven, of course, by the feedback we received from the board. So at present, the board noted a number of criteria that it had concern with. So the draft, at this stage, notes those concerns. And of course, unless the board makes affirmative, positive findings on each one of those criteria, the board's not in a position to grant an approval. So right now, it's an open-ended draft, although it's pointing in the direction of having some missing criteria to reach an approval. So I think there'll be a couple more working drafts exchanged between Ms. Taylor and myself. But I would expect for your next meeting, it'll be ready to be taken up by the board.
Thank you very much, Brian. I appreciate that. Martha, do you have anything to add to that, or are you good with what Brian had just delivered?
Yes, no, I'm good with that.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. George.
Another comment.
Yes,
I don't think anybody here questions my concern about safety and the location. The fire station above on the heading east from the location is about 10 seconds away at 30 miles an hour. I timed that again today for myself, and giving the fire company whatever it takes to get equipment up and running, they could be out of the barn and heading to the west side of the highway, which is important to them because they handle that side. I'm just curious about the number of runs that would be interfering, roughly the times, and the concerns of what equipment would be coming across and cannot be delayed. That station also serves a part of Georgetown if necessary. And that's important to me.
George, those are very good points. The EMS, they do run advanced life support, which does cover 95, and they do cross coverage with Georgetown. So those are very good points. And if you would like, George, I could ask Martha to query the fire chief to see what historically has gone out 95 and what has gone out to Georgetown, just so that could answer your question as to the amount of calls that are going.
Thank you. Thank you. I would appreciate that.
Westerly on the road. Yep, that's good. Martha, you comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I think until what we need to do at this point in time is, okay, I see a hand up. So I do want to kind of conclude public comment because we do have a couple other meetings. So what we're looking for is we're looking for new information or new comments because we have had this hearing going for a bit. So I see Janet, if you have new information, new comments, please name and address. Thank you.
Anna Nicolaisen, 6 Central Court. As a member of the Newbury Fire Department, somebody that drives the ambulance, I have come across that road and hit the foul that's in the road. I have significant concerns about the cars turning in and out of this proposed project. You have the possibility of 2 ambulances, 2 engines, and a ladder truck just from the Byfield station that's going to come over that way. There's not a lot of space from around that corner until you'd be coming upon the entrance to the gas station. And I know of accidents that have happened from cars that have come, a motorcycle laid down because of the foul that's in the road. Now, if you add the traffic on top of it, it's a huge concern. And as somebody that drives that emergency equipment, it is a huge concern. Thank you for listening.
Appreciate very much, Janet, and it's timely for your insight for that. Appreciate your participation tonight. Thank you very much. And Steve. Go ahead, sir.
Sorry, myself.
Yes, please.
Hi, Connor Beaumont, 65 Larkin Road. Mr. Guba, I had a direct question for you. I was wondering about your calculation for the max lot coverage percentage there. You have 18.5% on there. Is that truly being calculated on total lot coverage, or is that your building coverage ratio? I know that the zoning bylaws don't really appear to define the difference between the two, but it would seem to have a pretty large impact on this site.
It's building coverage, which is I think is the normal way of looking at it, unless there's a separate requirement for open space coverage or pervious impervious ratio. So yes, it's based on building coverage.
Understood. Okay. In my personal experience, I work in private equity real estate development in the greater Boston market. And I would say in my personal experience, I found the latter to be true, that when it's specified with lot coverage, it specifically pertains to the amount of lot that is covered rather than the amount of building that is covering the lot. But I do note that it is not specifically outlined within the bylaws. And so that would be more up to the zoning board itself. That was all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and your participation this evening. Great. Okay, so just to recap, our draft decision is in process. And so I'd like to continue both of these hearings, the site plan review hearing and the special permit hearing, so that we could conclude those. So Martha, is it possible to see if we can kick your computer to get screen sharing working?
I will try.
Right. A little left foot shuffle.
I'm still getting the message saying that my screen sharing is paused.
If I may, Martha, at the top of your screen, is there a pause and play button? Because if that's clicked, then that'll pause it regardless of what you do there.
I'll get the door.
All right, let me try that. No, there isn't, but let me try this again. Bear with me here. Now I seem to have lost that altogether. I'm sorry.
So what I'll need you to do is kind of give us a guidance, a little bit of guidance on what our availability looks like on for our schedule.
Okay, I'm just going to try to open this again one more time. I think
the thing that's different is there isn't a little green arrow appearing next to you when you're doing that this time. I don't know if that's good or bad.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Okay. Nice. So I'll just have to have you guide us based upon what you see for the spreadsheet.
All right, so right now we have actually March 3rd, we've got the continuance of the 2 Old Point Road. We're actually starting that meeting early. We're going to start at 6:30. 2 Old Point Road is at 6:45, and then we've got the 15 Coleman Road, the 2 hearings. OSRD special permit and the definitive subdivision plan opening that night, as well as at 217, 221 High Road. March 17th, the only thing we have scheduled right now is the 3 Newburyport Turnpike site plan review continuance.
It makes sense to put this on the 17th. From scheduling standpoint, since we only have one hearing.
That would seem to make sense.
Okay, I would accept a motion from the board for a continuance to the 17th of March for this public hearing for both site plan review and special permit for 7:15.
So moved.
Great, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, on the motion, any discussion, George?
None.
Okay, any discussion, Leslie?
No.
Any discussion, Woody?
No.
Any discussion, Mary?
No.
Okay, on the question, George, how say you?
Yes.
Okay, and on the motion, Leslie?
Yes.
On the motion, Woody?
Yes.
On the motion, Mary?
Yes.
Okay, chairs in favor. Well, so we will continue both the site plan review and the special permit hearing for this of the 17th of March at 7:15. Thank you very much, everyone. Public, and Tony, very much. Thank you, sir. Okay, we're continuing on with our agenda, so let me just pop that back up. And that's over here. So our second is going to be a public hearing continuance for an open space residential development in OSRD, special permit application 105 High Road, map R48, lot 49, applicant DePiro LLC, owner, author, and Sandra Constantis, continued from January 20th, 2021. So that's where we're at, and let me drop that down and see what I have here. Okay, so some information just to bring the board and public up to date on. The property was conveyed to a new owner, Joe Manton. Do I have that name correct, Martha?
Mitchell Manton, yes.
Okay. By deed that was recorded in the Southern Essex Registry of Deeds on the 5th of January 2021. And that on Monday, the 15th of February, so this Monday, Attorney Mann provided the board with a copy of a notarized authorization from Mitchell Manton to DePiro LLC and Mark DePiro to apply to the Newbury Planning Board and Conservation Commission, as well as other local, state, and federal boards or agencies for all approvals and permits necessary to develop the property located at 105 High Road. So at this point in time, I'm going to ask representatives, either Jill Mann, Steve Sawyer, or Mark DePiro to presenting new materials. I do know that we received some materials today at 3:30, and I do know that Attorney Mann and Town Council did have an opportunity to have a discussion regarding some different components. So who would like to go first? Jill, Steve, or Mark?
At this point, if it pleases the board, I'd like to start off. Jill Mann, legal counsel to DePiro LLC, the applicant in connection with an OSRD. As was stated by Mr. Pecos, we in fact did have a meeting, Brian Winter and I, town council, to discuss the two key points that the board wanted to be flushed out. Those being the yield plan and its, I guess, classification as a by right yield plan, or a plan that could be approved pursuant to subdivision control without any waivers, and would demonstrate and show lots that in fact can be approved without the need for any special relief under the zoning bylaw. Attorney Winter and I reviewed that and basically discussed the fact that it also had been reviewed by the peer review engineer. Pardon? Oh, sorry. It had been reviewed by the peer review engineer.
I have my phone.
And no comment was made. I'm sorry, I just keep hearing somebody talk, that's why. So
I just muted them.
I'm sorry, thanks so much, I appreciate it, Ms. Taylor. So what I did, and also Attorney Winter and I just did discuss the open space component of the bylaw. What Attorney Winter had asked that we do is simply for illustrative purposes, provide the board with, for lack of a better term, a very simple open space plan that just shows the area being created. And then what I didn't submit any new material. I simply provided for lack of a better term, again, an outline so that it would be easier for all of us to just follow what the key residual issues are and to just get them on the table. Because I think that at this point, I don't know if I'm speaking for everyone or if I'm just speaking for myself, I think there's a little permit fatigue, and people are ready and eager to have this project move forward, and to have a decision relative to whether or not this yield plan is accepted by the board, and whether or not the bonus unit requested is going to be issued, and whether or not the board sees fit to do an OSRD or not, and then would prefer us to simply continue, with the definitive subdivision filing following that preliminary plan that we had submitted, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, or the plan with the 12 units on it, whether we were going to submit for definitive subdivision based on that. So if I may, Ms. Taylor, would it be possible to please, if Chairperson Pecos allows it, to have Steve Sawyer share his screen so we can bring up that open space plan, and then just to go through that bullet point list as well?
Sure thing. Martha?
Steve, you should be set to do that.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Welcome.
Steve, maybe you know what, the first thing probably, here's that very simple plan for open space. What we did was we removed all the lots from it. We showed the lots, I apologize. We didn't show the homes on it. We didn't show a lot of the noise that is otherwise on that 11 unit OSRD plan. This plan simply shows the open space and how the development area is cut from the open space area. So I guess, Steve, can you just put up the bullet list if you would, because I think it's best to answer the questions in maybe what is the most commonsensical order, which is the yield plan question first, then going back to the open space requirements, because Attorney Winter can also weigh in on that.
Okay, here, I've brought up the bullet list.
Thank you very much. Not yet, though.
Yeah, we're not.
You don't see that?
No.
We're just in the plan.
Yeah.
Plan, let's see.
It's a lovely plan, Steve, a lovely plan.
Now?
Nope.
No.
All right, I'm gonna have to stop share. Then I'll,
So Attorney Winter, I think at this point, though,
Share
let's
again.
just, you and I can just discuss the fact that we did in fact look at the, one of
How's
the
that?
purposes of our meeting. It's about to pop. There we go. One of the purposes of our meeting was to actually discuss whether or not the yield plan did show a plan that is what is by right pursuant to the terms of the open space bylaw. You need to show the basic number of units that would be permitted in an OSRD. And the way, in fact, to do that is to provide a plan that does not require any waivers under subdivision control and under the rules and regulations of the town, and does not require any superlative relief under the zoning bylaw, which means basically, for lack of a better term, what we call in the legal profession a by right plan. A plan that requires no approval and has no discretion. And I think based on our discussion, we demonstrated that there was no need to waive any of the design requirements of subdivision regulations. The 10-unit yield plan shows all of the lots for duplex dwellings. They're all more than 60,000 square feet, or more than 125 feet of frontage, all the appropriate setback areas, and then driveways that are compliant with what is required.
Can I look for a sec?
Yeah, please.
Steve, can you make that larger so that people can actually see this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Steve, did you hear that?
yeah.
That helps the tired old eyes here.
I understand. I hear you.
Okay,
That's why I thought this would be helpful to be able to see it.
Better?
Also. There you go.
Thank you.
Most certainly, you're welcome. So basically, that just provides you with a written summary of what I had just stated. And at this point, I think, Chairperson Pecos, I should probably refer to Attorney Winter, or do you want me to just continue? Because we did discuss this one element and then we can move on, or?
It's your floor, so however you-
Okay, so Brian, maybe you can just weigh in. I mean, do you agree that what's been written here is accurate and that the 10-unit plan shows a plan that does not have discretionary refusal rights? It's basically by right?
Well, let me back up for a minute, if I may, Mr. Chairman and Attorney Mann. So this is a list, just to be clear, that you, Attorney Mann, prepared after our meeting. We did not go over this document.
Yeah, no, not at
So
all.
I just wanted to be clear for the record and for the planning board members that when it says yes under bullet point 1, and I know further down the page it says yes, this document isn't something we agreed to. This is something that Attorney Mann prepared after our conversation. So I just want that to be clear, that this is her position statement, not a document we co-authored or sort of agreed to. So with that caveat now on the record, let me recap our discussion. And I believe it was it February 3rd, if I'm getting that correct? We had a lengthy conversation by Zoom, and the first topic of that conversation, as was requested by the board, was that we discussed the yield plan itself. And my comment, which I think is fairly reflected here, is that no areas of technical deficiency were brought to the board's attention from any town departments or from any peer review consultants, so that to the extent we were talking about the technical performance standard requirements, we didn't have any deficiencies that had been brought to our attention. So this is a little bit more detailed in terms of what those technical requirements are. But that was my general statement. And of course, it was subject to the caveat that there are more than just technical requirements. There are other requirements the board will have to consider as well, some more discretionary, and that this is only confined to the yield plan. If and when one day we do see a definitive plan and more complete engineering and data supporting it, we'll have to look at that time. But for the purposes of the yield plan, we didn't identify any areas of technical deficiency. And I think that fulfills what the board asked us to get together and do.
Well, absolutely, because this is not the definitive plan that would be submitted. I agree, Attorney Winter, and that's why I specifically didn't put down. I simply said that you review the confirmation and position of the peer reviewer, but I agree. This is solely for the purposes of the yield plan under the OSRD regulations for establishing basic minimum. Okay, so now let's go to the open space requirements. So this was something that we had discussed, and what you had suggested is that we just lay out what the requirements are of the actual provisions and then just answer them so that the board can see it quite clearly and concisely what exactly the text, if you will, of the bylaw is, and how in fact we assert that we comply with it. So I'm just going to read from it because it's easier. So, our position clearly is the open space contains more than 50% of the upland area and is connected by trails, which means it's contiguous. So we also say that, we've met the conditions or the provisions of 97.5C12A, because open space, what do we have to provide? And there's been a lot of confusion. So the exact text is that we need to provide a minimum of 50% of the upland shown on the development plan must be open space. So the property has a total area of 710,000 square feet, and it has a total upland area of 532,008 feet. The open space parcel that we are showing on that OSRD plan that we'll flip to in just a moment shows 506,453 square feet in the open space parcel alone. And of that, 328,000 square feet consists of upland. The requirement is met. So we exceed 50% because 50% of 532 is 266,000 square feet. Now we continue down and it says the open space parcel, and I just said the open space parcel consists of 71.29% of the total area, and it contains 61.67% of the upland areas. Those are just basically simple math. 506,000 divided by 710, 328,000 divided by 532 gives you those two percentages. So then now we have to go to the next point. Okay, so the open space has to be contiguous. Contiguous pursuant to your bylaw says that it has to be defined as being connected. Open space will still be considered connected if it's separated by a roadway or an accessory amenity. An accessory amenity is any feature or other item that can be added to a principal use that makes it more useful. Basically, this is the definition, dictionary definition, because you don't have an accessory amenity definition in your bylaw. The upland areas, the open space, are most certainly connected by walking trails and are contiguous. We are proposing to put in boardwalks that connect all of the open space within the open space and upland area in the wetland. We always were intending to put trails in, and that is basically contiguous area. So we assert that we have provided for, pursuant to the open space residential subdivision, open space sufficient to meet the guidelines in the specific wording contained therein. So relative to the bonus, this is where your bylaw becomes somewhat muddled, but we'll muddle through it now. So the question will be asked, and this is discretionary, obviously, is the proposal eligible for a density bonus? And our position is absolutely, yes, it is eligible, because we have set aside more than is required under the bylaw. And we are asking for at least one bonus unit under the OSRD, not at least, but we are just asking for one. So now we look at, okay, so how do you actually even determine what that is? So you look at 97.5C11. For each additional 10% of the site over the required 50%, you're entitled to a bonus unit. So petitioners basically required to dedicate 50% of the total uplands, which is 266,000 square feet. And we have provided more than that. We've provided 11% over. So because your bylaw actually doesn't say 10% of the site upland, it just says of the site. I just wanted to show you, if each additional 10% is based on the total area, right? Then the petitioner set aside 506,000 square feet and would actually be entitled to 3 bonus units. We're not asking for that. We're not asserting that, but I wanted you to see that's really how your bylaw is written and how it reads. But if you go down, I think the way it's going to be interpreted and the way we're going to interpret it for this evening is, Steve, can you pull it up, please?
With the plan?
No, just go down. There's a whole nother paragraph missing.
Okay.
There you go. So we're defining it as this way. If each additional 10% is based on upland area, that's how we interpret it. So petitioners set aside 328,000 square feet of upland. 266 satisfies the 50% set aside, and the 62,000 square feet of excess being placed in the open space, upland being placed in the open space, equals 11.67 of the total upland being set aside. So when you divide the two, you get 11.67. So for every 10%, there is the eligibility to receive a 10%, to receive a bonus unit. So that's how we derive those figures. And that's basically what our position is. And what we're asking tonight, and Brian, you can weigh, Attorney Winter, you can weigh in at any point, but what we're asking for this evening is for the board to review the way in which we have basically walked through the open space component, to go through the yield, obviously first, take a vote as to whether or not you accept the yield plan, and then proceed through. And we can then have, either proceed again with the OSRD plan or not. It's up to this board this evening. And we are hopeful that you'll accept this and give us the 11 unit OSRD plan, which does allow us to still provide that large area of open space. Why don't you put that back up, Steve? That plan.
Yep.
So essentially what you're going to see is the open space plan. And I do want to add, I just saw that we are going to put in, if this is an open space, residential subdivision, it will be a condominium. If it's a subdivision, a traditional subdivision where we're just going to create lots on the property, then it will be a traditional subdivision, individually owned lots. But under this scenario, it will be a condominium. And one of the things we will put in the condominium documents for each of the condominium owners to approve is a right to farm notice. So I do a fair amount of permitting, a right to farm communities, Groton, areas such as that, this community. And what I typically have done in the past is actually simply add a notation in the condominium documents, and then the owners actually sign the notice, and as far as having received that it's a right to farm community, and that will go in. So what you see before you is the 11 unit OSRD plan that shows the dedication of in excess of 10 acres of land for the open space for the town. It shows connectivity with regard to trails. While we do not have any consent authorization to connect to the trails for the abutting property owners, all of those trails are open. They're public trails, and we are going to provide them. And those trails will end up leading to places that will go to that publicly available property, and people will be able to walk through them. And that will be based on this. As we said before, the proposed roadway in the OSRD will remain private in perpetuity. Again, it'll be a condominium association so that everything will be controlled. With an 11 unit OSRD, we will have one septic system that will be controlled by the condominium. And again, so will the roadway. And this particular plan shows the breadth of the open space. Should there be conventional subdivision, obviously that doesn't happen. The open space is cut off. Trying to think of what else. I don't think I need to show the yield plan at this point. If you'd like to see it, I can show it again, but I'd ask the board members to ask, and we will do that, because I believe that the purpose of this evening's meeting was really to discuss the yield and then the quality and the extent of the open space. So at this point, I'd yield to the chair and await any comments. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jill. Steve, do you have anything more for us?
No, I don't.
Mark, do you have anything more for us?
Let's see. I think
No, I'm good.
Okay, great, thanks. For as far as board members, since we just got this information a couple hours ago, I'm going to ask you to review it and to give it some consideration. And then we'll have to take a look at what the thought process is on the numbers and calculations. And just for clarification, this, and Martha, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time I've heard the word condominium used. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Is that correct, Martha?
I think it's been mentioned previously.
Oh, it's definitely been mentioned many times for the OSRD. That's the only way to really do it.
For the OSRD, just for board member clarification, would be a condominium, and this would be a private road. That's what was just kind of clarified tonight. Okay. Let's see. Are there any? I just want to check to see if there's any initial comments, and I just want to go down the line. Larry, do you have any initial comments before I have Martha read emails and I have any public comments start?
Actually, I have a request, probably to Steve, but anyone. At some point, could you provide us? I'm looking at your, I forget what Attorney Mann called it, your sketch plan here. You're showing the upland opens, the upland in the undeveloped portion of the property. And it looks like there are 3 sections. There's the one right off the end of the cul-de-sac, that little one in the lower left-hand corner of the second parcel, second piece, then the larger one, which I think on one plan is identified as a little over 212,000 square feet. Would it be possible to provide the board with the breakdown of the square footage of each of those areas?
We had done, actually,
That's
sorry,
all
we had done that at the last meeting. I think I believe we had done that. That it was submitted with the last.
On this plan?
It wasn't on this plan, but it was on the plan that we reviewed about a month or so ago.
Yeah, no, the two back pieces, I agree. I think they're there. It's the front piece, I'm not sure we have it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because you've got the 212,894 for the larger of the parcels, larger of the sections. You got the 38,207 for that other piece I was mentioning down in the lower left-hand corner of the back piece. And I don't know that we, maybe
Steve,
it's
why don't you
there.
put up the plan?
Yeah, why don't you put it up?
can you see these as I'm scrolling through?
No.
You're not screen sharing right now, Steve.
Oh, there we go. All right, so here was, I believe this was the last one we submitted.
Yes.
Well, that's the one we're working on tonight, I think, isn't it?
No, this is the one we're working on tonight. Do you want me to put that one back up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess the information is there. I see it now.
Yeah.
We didn't add any additional information tonight. It was simply a recap to try and facilitate discussion, because like I understand how it, when you look at this, Mr. Murphy, it seems it's a lot of information on one page. So we just tried to strip out information that was extraneous when it came to the open space.
No, and I think that's fine. I was just looking for a breakdown of the square footage, and I see it there for the plan we have here. So that I guess we have. Thank you.
Very welcome.
Anything else, Larry?
No.
Okay. On what's been presented tonight, George, do you have any initial questions or comments before I turn it over for public comment?
Yes, Town Council Winter, from what I just understood him say, that he has not had an opportunity to read and absorb the written material that was presented by Attorney Mann. What I prefer to see is at least a writing, either agreeing or not agreeing about the different comments, particularly prepared by Town Council Winter. Is that okay with him and Attorney Mann? And I would ask Peter to ask that question.
Well, my understanding is this is the first time this information was submitted, was this afternoon. Yeah. And Brian has not reviewed this or provided information or insight to it. Is that correct, Brian?
Well, let me just clarify. The written submissions I had not seen. They are reflective of the conversation, the Zoom conversation that we had. So the information contained, I'm generally aware of. That's the substance of the conversation I had with Attorney Mann. But I haven't seen the written submission. But I think more importantly, it's not have I had a chance to digest it and comprehend it. Keep in mind, I had more time with Attorney Mann, and we had an opportunity to sort of work through this step by step, question by question. The members of this board have not had the opportunity that I had. So I'd like to make myself available, knowing what I know and with the benefit of the conversation that I had, to answer any questions from the board members once you've had a chance to really sink your teeth into this. That was a lot of information, and I understand that a lot of it was in the submissions thus far in one form or another, but I think this is the first time you've probably seen it in this form and sort of the analytical step-by-step process. So I imagine you're going to want to spend some time with that, and I'm imagining that you're going to have some questions for me as well.
I have to tell you that I would never have submitted this information if I had thought it was going to cause a delay. I only did it to facilitate discussion. So I'm hoping that we're going to do that this evening. I truly didn't add information. I simply pulled it out of what you have so that you could easily go through it all. I just am kind of surprised because it was simply meant to be a tool, not a submittal. By any stretch.
Yeah, so we typically, I've always had an OSID land summary. It's basically what Jill just extrapolated and held in detail. You look at this summary, we've had this on the plan forever. And honestly, I've done a lot of OSIDs. I've never spent so much time on a yield plan or the open space. Usually you provide a table and that's it, we move on. This seems, it seems like there's been an awful lot of time spent dwelling on, number one, the yield plan, and number two, the open space calculation.
I appreciate that, Steve, but I don't think the boards ever had this completely summarized as a narrative to say, point A, this is our point. Point A leads to point B. Point B leads to point C. Point C leads to point D. This is the first time that this type of a narrative, from my historical recollection, has been summated, which was one of the things that came out of your discussion between the two attorneys to provide to the board. And I think the narrative was actually, I think my hope was that the narrative was going to be presented to the board so that they could have time to digest it and not receive the narrative summation as we have this afternoon, and then it to be presented as a narrative summation to the board, right now to say, okay, here it is. I want your decision on it. I can't. So, excuse me. So I think it's important that we understand that for this to work, there has to be an A to B, B to C, D. So that's where we're at. George, do you have anything else before? Because I just want to get through the board right now with initial comments and questions. Do you have
Nothing
anything else?
additional. I just want the opportunity to speak with Attorney Winter.
Yes.
Winter at our pleasure in the meeting, if we have to have one, and have him confirm our thoughts or disconfirm one way or the other so that we can come down to a decision. I never would have expected to come in here tonight to make a decision on this without having heard from both Attorney Winter and Attorney Mann in a manner that they can come across and say, this is what we think ought to happen, and then give us time to consider it.
I understand, George. I understand, and I appreciate your point. Thank you. Thank you. Leslie, do you have any comments or questions or concerns from what has been presented to us this evening?
The only thing is I would like to have a little time to review it and make sure that I understand it correctly. I understand there weren't any changes, but the language seemed to be a little bit different. So I just want to kind of review the whole thing again.
Thank you. Woody, any questions or comments on what has been shared thus far with the board?
Yes, I think we need time to review it, but also I'm bothered a little bit by one thing that I've heard a few times now. On the back rectangle section of open space, which is open space in the back, we keep talking of trails that will connect to trails on public land behind it, and there are no trails behind this particular lot that are on public land. They are quite a distance from there, and if you go out in those woods, I've been in those woods, it's not a trail system out there. There is over on the Spencer Pierce off of Little's Lane, but not behind this lot. And I just don't want people to be fooled by the notion that you're going to create a trail system that's going to connect the trails on public land. There isn't any there. And that's all.
Thank you, Woody. Could we stop screen sharing for a sec, Steve? I just want to I want to be able to see my board as well. I'm talking to them. Mary, did you have any questions or concerns on what has been discussed or presented thus far?
Oh, it's a new format, so I want to throw it into context with everything else. So I guess I'm vying for a little more time as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Martha, do you have any emails or letters that have been received since our last public hearing? Was that in December?
Yes. Yeah, it was December 6th, I think.
Okay.
So let me try this again, because we do have a few. If I can't pull it up, then I will. I'm still getting the stop. I don't know what's going on tonight. I'm sorry.
Okay. Can you just kind of help us verbally then?
Yeah, so we've had
We'll just stop screen sharing too.
Okay, so are you seeing anything at all? Are you seeing black?
Yeah, just,
Black.
Okay, all right, hold on.
thank you.
So let me, so we've had communications from, well, since December 6th, I'll take that as the date, from Carol Rice, 330 High Road, Will Roberts in Salisbury, non-resident, Chris and Bonnie Simpson at 107 High Road, a couple of Catherine O'Brien, Diane and Peter Tufts and their family, 25 Pine Island Road, and Nancy Soward, 29 Old Pine Island Road. And these were all in opposition to the project.
Are they on the website, Martha, so I can see them? I haven't received copies.
They're all on the website except for Nancy Soward's, which came in just late this afternoon.
Okay.
So I'm happy to send that to you.
Yeah, that'd be great if you wouldn't mind. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. At this time, I'd like to ask for any public comment. So what we'd be looking for at this point, we'd be looking for any new information or any new questions that have not been asked in the past. We've had a lot of discussion with this project, so the board is looking for any new comments or new questions in this process. So public comment at this time. Martha, do you have any hands up?
I'm not, Catherine O'Brien is physically waving her hand.
Okay. So Catherine, what we're looking for is we're looking for new information or new comments that have not been shared with the board before. So new information or new comments. Thank you. Name and address, please. Thanks. You're muted, but you'll have to unmute yourself, Catherine. Yep.
You can see my technical ability is just superior. Oh my God, I just hit something. Wait a minute. What happened here?
You're good. We can hear you. We can see you.
All right, wait a minute. I can't see any of you.
Okay. But we can hear you and we can see you, Catherine.
So here's my question. It's a question, it's not a comment. When someone submits a preliminary subdivision plan, how far in advance do they have to get it into the planning board for it to be considered?
So that's your question. Okay. I'll defer that to Martha to help us with that answer.
Sure. So generally what we like to do is get a draft about 2 weeks ahead of time so that it can be reviewed to make sure that it meets all of the submission requirements before it actually gets submitted. And then assuming that all is correct, by the time the agenda is set, which is a little less than a week before the meeting, we confirm, but it actually gets submitted to the board on the night of a meeting. That's it. It needs to be filed with the board at a planning board meeting.
Okay, then I would like to suggest that since we have a brand new owner, we have a brand new applicant on this project. And this needs to start from the beginning if it's going to get started again. Mr. Manton was not the applicant, and Mr. DePiero never owned the house. So that's my recommendation, and it's a new one.
I appreciate your comments and questions. The documentation that we have does transfer those rights, as I understand that correctly. Is that correct, Brian?
Yes, it is, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is required to show sufficient site control, not necessarily continuity of ownership. So we now, after conversations between myself and Attorney Mann, we now have appropriate and sufficient documentation as a matter of record, showing authorization to proceed.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay. And my next question is this. Why is it that the town hall, the planning board, and the attorneys seem to be trying so hard to work for Mr. DePiero to get this subdivision approved. It seems like every meeting, there's been some kind of a meeting that hasn't been part of an open meeting, open hearing. And information seems to be traded between both attorneys. And so I'm kind of concerned that there's been a very one-sided approach to this subdivision, very one-sided, and that despite the fact that we have so many residents opposed to it and continue to be opposed to it, that there's been very little attention given to these people. I mean, we've never even had a letter read. How do we know you've even read them? No one got an answer from anybody. No one has even had a confirmation that this office got a letter from a particular resident. So I just think it's really, it's blatantly prejudiced towards Mr. DePiero, who told me personally that he gets everything he wants in Newbury because Newbury loves him. And this is a perfect example of it, of how this happened. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how can that happen? Well, I've been watching it month after month. This is what's been happening month after month. And Mr. Pecos, you've been saying many times that you want to help this gentleman get his approval. Well, why are you doing that? You're working for the residents of this town, not for Mr. DePiero. And I've had a lot of people call me very angry that they feel it's very one-sided, and would I make sure that I said something tonight. So I'm saying it, and it's new. It's not something I've said before, but it is very, very one-sided. And I want to go on record that it's one-sided. And this board has been trying very hard to get this subdivision approved. It's a poor subdivision. It should never be approved. And it's been faked from the beginning with the number of lots that are on there. I can't believe that the planning board does not know the yield. Okay. You give it to attorneys to figure out. And of course the attorneys, they want the subdivision. So I'm just telling you, why doesn't this board know what a yield is?
Okay, Catherine, I appreciate your comments, and I reserve it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the public of this point? Okay, Martha, we're having difficulty with screen sharing, right? So
We seem to be, I don't know why.
what I'd like to do is I want to kind of go over, and Larry, help me with this one, because I think it'd be appropriate to kind of review the purpose and the intent of the OSRD. Do you think that would be a helpful discussion?
I think we need to move to that, at some point, and sooner rather than later, probably.
Okay. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to share my screen, Martha.
Okay.
Anything can pop up here, folks. I hope it's okay. All right, here we go. So I'm going to start screen sharing, I think. And I'm going to go OSRD special, that's the one I want. Okay, that's the correct one. I think, right, Martha?
There we go.
That's actually the decision criteria, not the purpose and intent.
Nope, I don't want that one. Let me minimize that one. Let me get back over to screen sharing, which is down here. And I want special permit, OSRD, that's that one. Purpose and the intent. Nope, that's the wrong one. Technology, I apologize, folks. I wasn't planning on doing this.
And I'm sorry, I don't know why. Mine's not.
That's it. So Larry, I want you to help me through this process, if you wouldn't mind.
This is still, I'm sorry, this is still the decision criteria, not the purpose and intent.
This is not the purpose and intent right here, Martha?
No.
Primary purpose and secondary purposes.
Yeah, that's not what's showing up on this, at least not on my screen.
Oh, what have I done wrong, folks? Oh, I see. That's that one. So what I probably need to do.
Peter, you have to unshare, go back, and then share again.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you can see, folks, I have not done this piece before. So I'm going to go over here, and I don't want that one. And I'm going to open this up. And I keep going back to that. So I want to go over here. Hold on, folks. Stick with me. It's kind of one of these learning experiences. That's it. I think that's it. And so with that in place, I'm going to minimize that. That's over there. I'm going to go to screen sharing. And I'm going to purpose. It's the purpose and intent, right, Martha?
Yes.
Okay. Is that it? That's it.
That's it.
Looks like it.
Okay, cool. Now let me see if I can pull it up. I might have a little bit of difficulty here.
Your screen is doing something a little strange here.
I am very, no, I don't want to enable editing. So I think we're just going to start here and then just roll it up. Can you see that? Because I have no idea what you're looking at.
Hey, fucking amazing one. This is meeting 15.
You were seeing section 1A, 01 through 03.
Okay, great. Okay, so what I wanted to do.
You see what she said about me? Like, could I ever say that?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I think Mark needs to mute himself. I think you're hearing him talk on the phone.
Yeah, I think he just did.
Okay. So what this is basically, purpose in the, this is the OSRD, purpose of the intent, the primary purpose for the open space residential development, oh boy, I'm having, is the following. One is to allow for greater flexibility and creativity in the design of residential developments. The second primary purpose is to encourage permanent preservation of open space, agricultural land, forested land, wildlife habitat, other natural resources, including aquifers, water bodies, wetlands, and historical and archaeological resources in a manner that is consistent with Newbury's open space plan. The third is to encourage a less sprawly and more efficient forms of development that consumes less open space, less open land, and conforms to existing topography and natural features better than conventional and grid subdivisions.
This does.
The fourth is to minimize the total amount of disturbance on a site. The fifth is to further the goals and policies of the open space plans. And the sixth is to facilitate the construction and maintenance of houses, streets, utilities, and the provisions of public services in a more economical and efficient manner. So the secondary purposes of an OSRD are to preserve and enhance the community character, to protect the value of real estate, to provide a diversified housing stock, to provide affordable housing to persons of low and income. And fifth, to provide open spaces managed for passive recreation, which are accessible to the public. Okay, did that come through okay, Martha?
Yes.
Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna stop screen sharing so I can get back to folks. Larry, where do you think we are here with this?
Well, are you looking for a comment on each of these points, or?
We could, and I'm sorry I brought that down, but I think all of the board members had this in a recent email that Martha has facilitated. So you will have those components. I wanted to read those to the public so the public could have an understanding and appreciation of that. I have them here, and if you want, Larry, do you want to go point by point?
I can, if you'd like. I mean, I have the document in front of me.
Yep.
As far as the first point, to allow greater flexibility and creativity in design of residential developments, I'm not sure how this particular project advances that goal, be honest with you. Number two, to encourage the permanent preservation of open space. Certainly, it would be desirable to keep that back section of the lot as open space. But we have to weigh against that, that there's, it's not the only consideration, certainly. Number three, to encourage a less sprawling and more efficient form of development that consumes less open land and conforms to existing topography and natural features better than a conventional or grid subdivision. Well, with the conventional subdivision, you've got a 500-foot cul-de-sac. What we're doing here is, with a maximum of 5 duplex units on it, what we're doing here is, I think, more than doubling the length of the cul-de-sac. And now we're talking about breaking ground for an additional 5 units, or 5 structures, I should say. So I'm not sure that that goal is met. To minimize the total amount of disturbance on the site, the same comment. Further, the goals and policies of the open space plans. The open space plan does favor OSRD forms of development. But again, it's just calling something an OSRD doesn't necessarily mean it meets all the goals of the open space plan or the bylaw. To facilitate the construction and maintenance of housing, streets, utilities, et cetera. Once again, I come back to the issue of the length of the cul-de-sac, and you're adding 5 more structures on it. What's a very, fairly restricted parcel of land for the total overall acreage. I mean, the problem to me is you've got a very difficult site here, and you're trying to do perhaps too much on it, honestly. I don't know that we're preserving or enhancing the community character for the secondary purposes. To protect the value of real property, I find that difficult to deal with because, the property owners have a right to develop their property, and obviously you wouldn't want a noxious use to go in, but a residential use is not noxious in my mind. I hope in anybody's mind. To provide for a diversity of housing stock or affordable housing, I don't know that we're doing that. And as far as the open space lands management, I come back to what Woody said about the lack of any connecting trails in the back. It might be, I would urge the developer, if you can get some written proof from Historic New England that owns the Pierce Little Spencer Farm, that they have some interest in connecting to your trails, that might put that particular issue in a better posture. But my understanding is informally that they don't have any interest in it. And, I think with, 3 or 4 parking spaces at the end of this foot cul-de-sac, I don't know how much use the public is really going to get of that back piece anyway. So, I mean, those are my concerns.
All right. Thank you. I want to kind of go down board members to kind of do a similar exercise to what Larry just did. So George, do you have these permit developmental intents in front of you by chance?
Yeah, effectively, my comments would be very much the same as Larry's. A lot of this is very subjective when you deal with the provisions, but you can make some reasonable compensation to yourself to say, yes, Larry's right, he's wrong, but I agree with him.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Leslie, using the same kind of approach with those purpose of intents, do you want to go through those individually, or do you want to pull out components?
I think one of the things that I look at is I don't think it's an enhancement of the open space landscape and the style of the road. I don't see any, I agree with, the back part of the property, having to look into that as far as if Spencer Little is even interested in, combining the two. Many of the points that Larry made are exactly the way that I've been feeling about the project for almost the entire time.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Woody, on the purpose and intent, the primary purpose and the secondary purposes, do you have any comments to those components?
Everyone's covered a lot of what I could say on all of it, and I agree with what Larry says. And I also think that to imply that, I've already said it, but to imply that there's a trail system that could be open to the public, access to trail systems there, they don't exist. So whether or not Spencer Pierce would be interested in working with them on that, the trails don't exist now. So it's a wooded public lot Spencer Pierce, that Spencer Pierce has behind them. Also, in the second part of this, there hasn't been anything mentioned of affordable housing, and that's actually a concern of mine too. So otherwise, I agree with what everyone else has said.
All right, thank you, Woody.
Thank you, Peter.
Mary, do you have any comments or thoughts on the purpose and intent, primary purposes 1 through 6, or secondary purposes 1 through 5?
Going back to what I have always felt about this is that I don't see this issue of getting access to the public open space. I've always wondered about where do you park, how do you get there? And again, going back, sorry, I'll repeat everyone's comments, but Woody's comment and Larry's comment, if there's no trail that comes into it, how the heck do you get there? That's all.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you. I appreciate the comments that the boards have made. We haven't looked at this aspect of the project before, and I think it's important that we do appreciate the purpose and the intent of the OSRD, both primary purpose and secondary purposes. And there are concerns that have been articulated very well, and both that hit the primary purpose as well as secondary purpose. Larry, guidance on next steps. What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we've spent an awful lot of time, just as was commented on earlier, hung up on what are often just very preliminary matters. And I think, such as the yield plan, such as the open space. And we haven't really had any sort of a meat and potatoes discussion on the actual merits of the OSRD. We've just highlighted it. We've highlighted some concerns we have. And I think it would be appropriate to give the developer an opportunity to respond to those. And I'm not sure, and I'll say to Ms. O'Brien, I'm not sure that Mr. DePiero agrees that we're bending over backwards for him. In fact, if anything, I think he probably feels just the opposite.
Thank you, Larry. And before we go anywhere, Brian, do you have any insight as to helping with direction of the board at this time?
No, I agree with Mr. Murphy's point that I think, we have been spending a lot of time on making sure, you've got all your boxes checked in terms of the yield plan and the open space, and there's still some, open questions on that. But you've been at this for quite a while, and I think, getting into the merits of it makes a lot of sense. You've got the design criteria slide, I know, ready to go at some point, but I don't think because we've heard so much on some of the preliminaries, I don't think we've heard as much as perhaps the board would like on the merits. Attorney Mann certainly can take an opportunity to do that now, or orally or in written form at the next meeting. So I think inviting her to do so makes perfect sense. And either before or after that, I think the board should, consider taking a deep dive into the merits at that point.
I appreciate that.
What does that mean, Brian? What do you mean?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch who said that.
I'm sorry, the last part, deep dive to, what was the end game there?
To start taking a poll of the board that would lead to potentially a straw vote on the merits of the application. So that, just let me even take it, a step farther back. The next step for me would be to ask the board to give me enough detail and instructions so that we can start working on a draft decision. In order to do that, I'm going to need a sense of the board on each one of those criteria. So procedurally, from my perspective, that's the next step that I would need the board to take. I don't know if the board's there in terms of your public hearing process, but when you do arrive at that point, that's what I would ask the board to consider.
Well, if I could jump in there, Section 13 of the bylaw says, pretty straightforward, that, that we may grant an OSRD special permit if it determines that the OSRD has less detrimental impact on the tract than a conventional subdivision, after considering the following facts. And then there are a total of 7 criteria that I think would probably at some point want to go through in detail. And some of them are very similar to what we've talked about tonight in the purpose of intent clause, but or section rather. But at some point, I think we do need to go through those in detail and as you say, take a straw vote on it.
Yeah. So, Larry, now you brought up the decision for the planning board, in this process, and I'm not sure we're there yet. I think if we stick on the criteria, I think that's going to, the purpose and the intent, I think, is probably a better directing point for us. And from what I've heard from the board, a lot of the concerns that have been articulated have reservations about whether this is more detrimental than a conventional subdivision. Martha, I just want to ask your opinion on this as part of our discussion.
In terms of the appropriate time to go through the decision criteria, or?
Right.
And I'd say it's really up to the board. It seems like it might make sense to digest the information that was provided this evening in terms of the open space calculations, because those do need to be taken into consideration. And then with the discussion tonight on the purpose and intent, go into the decision criteria in detail next time. But obviously it's up to the board.
Larry, do you think that's a good direction to go in?
I do. And it would also give the developer an opportunity to respond to what we've said. Can I raise an issue that has not been discussed yet?
Absolutely, Larry.
And I only want to bring it up because I don't think it's fair to ambush people with what might be an issue that was unanticipated. But I'd urge you, Jill Mann and others, to take a look at Section 10D of our bylaw, and particularly the minimum front and side yard setbacks. I think you've got a problem with the existing house lot, the existing structure. From what I can see, you're only about 4 feet off the right of way. You've only got about a 4-foot setback. And I think because it's a reduced dimensional lot, you've got to take your frontage off Surrey Lane, which requires, I believe, 20 feet. But even if you view that as a side setback issue, you still don't meet the 10 feet that I think is required under section 10D. And again, I'm not looking for a comment on that. I just don't want to ambush you with that issue at the next meeting. And I think it goes right to the decision criteria number 7, whether the concept plan and supporting documents comply with all sections of the zoning bylaw. So I just want to give you a heads up on that it's an issue I see at least.
Can I ask you, are you talking about the OSRD plan or the yield plan?
I'm talking about the OSRD plan,
Okay, that's right. Okay,
not the yield plan, no.
thank you.
And apparently, from what I've been told, there's also an existing set, the existing structure is non-conforming as to the setback from High Road. And if you're changing the lot dimensions, then you also may be losing that grandfathered status. So you may have some issues there, is what I'm saying, with the OSRD plan and the setbacks for the existing house. Take a look at it. You may disagree.
Yeah, I mean, with non-conforming lots, I mean, we can have a discussion, but I mean, I wouldn't, if the board would allow it, I would like to somewhat respond for about a couple of minutes just for the discussion relative to the purposes. I will be brief. So strange, I don't see Chair. Oh, there you are. You moved on my screen, Chairman Pecos. Like for some reason you keep bouncing.
It's just magical.
It's unreal. It's weird. It's like all of a sudden you're here, then you're down the bottom. I'm trying to find you.
I understand.
So I mean, I guess I would like to respond to that and to kind of follow up on what Attorney Winter had said. Is that okay?
For sure. If we can just kind of keep concise. And I also see that Mark wants to.
Oh, most certainly I will be. So relative to the purposes, I agree that the board needs to review those and to make a determination. But I have to be honest with you, it appears that you are not in favor of this OSRD at all. There wasn't any positive response to any degree, which was kind of surprising. I think that we really do need to kind of focus on those issues because there's no point even to consider the yield plan or the open space plan if the board does not believe that this particular project is susceptible to approval. I will say that I never said that the trails actually connect. I said that that the trails will lead to that lot, which is that, I apologize, that conservation property, and then there is an open property. You don't have to have trails to walk them. It's about having open space recreation. It's about being able to have access to beauty, vistas, etc. That's where the benefit comes, because other than for this OSRD, there will be no access. Relative to the affordable, I agree, there is no affordable component here. It's not really a requirement under your OSRD, and we're not proposing any because we probably are not going to get anything relatively substantial with regard to density. And as far as, being preserving open space, if you do not value the backland, I know you value it, I don't mean it like that, but if you don't think that it's going to be a material improvement to the residents of Newbury, if we give you that back space, then there is no open space value, because when we do the definitive subdivision plan, there will be no access back there. That's the only real benefit, is that we are going to give that, we are going to create trails, and we are going to preserve that area in perpetuity. With regard to, less sprawl, I mean, you really consolidate you saw our preliminary plan. We go clear to the back and we develop all of the upland. So there is a tremendous reduction in sprawl. I mean, I would say that almost every inch of the open space upland will be used in a conventional subdivision plan, and it will not be in this. So it is a densing, making it more of a cluster. As far as enhancing, neighborhood quality, I mean, it's a subdivision. It's a small, tiny subdivision. I understand that, there's a lot of angst with regard to the neighborhood, but I know that, at one point, Ms. O'Brien wanted to sell her land and develop it for units. It's not just one person who wants to develop. Everybody has the right, and so does she. I guess that's all I have to say. And I would love to hear, somewhat of a straw vote, because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money. And I just think the board too is fatigued. And I think Mr. DePiero is. You're going to hear him speak. I can see his hand is properly raised. So at this point, I promise to be concise, and I apologize for going over, but thank you very much for providing me the opportunity to respond.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. Mark, go ahead. Name and address, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yep. So there's never been a time ever that I've ever said the Newbury Planning Board is in my back pocket. Anybody to hear the last 14 meetings would agree with that. Definitely the case. Okay. So when lies like that are thrown around, I'm going to defend myself, and I won't say any further past that. When I first came into the town hall and met Martha, and at the time, this was a while ago, she asked me, Mark, you're not considering doing any residence out back, are you? I said, no, we want to keep everything out front. Yeah, she was very concerned about it at the time. So we've always tried to focus on the first 6 acres, which it's only 4.5 acres of the 16 we're developing, and the roadway now becomes public use. So if you took the roadway out of it, it's 3.5 acres of actual space for residences. And Larry's comment, if I took you over to Wilshire, we have the same distance from buildings to the road on a brand new subdivision that has worked out amazingly well over there. So that, and when it is OSRD, there are frontages, sideline requirements, and rear line requirements that are relaxed because you're taking 60,000-foot lots and packing homes into small areas so that the town, the residents, get 12 and 13 acres of use of the property. So that's why it's always been the case. There's never been a time that we really wanted to go out back. So, but it's been many meetings, a lot of energy up till now. And that time has come for us to make a decision. I think we're here. So, we start getting into all the percentages. Woody talked about going out back, and I'm sure Woody knows this place like the back of his hand. It does butt up to historic New England, and you can walk right out there. It's all public land. And you can, and I'm told Arthur Costonis, I think, is on there tonight. He's had a lot of trouble. That's why he's moving to Florida. He's got family problems down there with health. So he's ran into a lot of trouble. But Arthur, actually, there's a big group of these guys that will get on snowmobiles and ride literally for hours. And I think, Woody, you could back that up. There's thousands of acres out there, and you can go for a long period. So it's not that you're just going to walk on the 10 acres. You do have the ability to walk a little further, and you're not on private land. There is state land out there, the Parker River. So there's a lot more there than was just represented. So that's what I had to say. Tried to be as compact as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay. All right.
I see Arthur's hand is raised.
Okay. Arthur, would you name and address, please? Thanks. You need to unmute yourself, sir.
Hi, Arthur Costonis, 105 High Road. Can you hear me, board?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to address a couple of things tonight. I mean, Mark is correct. We're going to be heading out of town shortly. We've got some issues going on, but I've sat here for a year and a half, and if I may just call out the points. First of all, with regard to open space, Woody's comments are absurd. I mean, really, aren't we supposed to be I sat on the board years ago. I mean, I understand open space as well as anybody else. Aren't we supposed to be talking about open space for this plan? This is 16.5 acres of land where Mark is only using 4 acres for development. The rest of it becomes open space to the public. Isn't that the purest form of what open space development is all about? I mean, just food for thought. And with regard to the trails, there are beautiful trails on this property, the 16.5 acres. I don't know why Mark is pushed into a position where he has to connect with Historic New England, which, for the record, they're very much in favor of, but they cannot take a position either way. They have taken a position with us informally that they would be very much interested in having a trail system connectivity, but they can't for political reasons. So they will not put it in writing, and that's a fact. And with regard to the trails, there are beautiful trails on this property, which is really what we should be talking about, not the other 4,000 acres of Historic New England and the Parker River Reservation. That's immaterial. I can walk out there and have, for the 17 years I've been here, I've been riding snowmobiles with a group of other people and neighbors in this neighborhood. And as far as the residents, I know of personally several neighbors on Riverview who do not have access to this property and have begged for access for it in the past years. And being held back from having access, their positions will be completely reversed with regard to what they've been told in the past. I've been silent to date. In summary, I'll get right to it. The property is going to be developed. A property developer has a right to develop their property under the zoning bylaws. What I think you should really take a look at as a board is, what do you want developed here? The property is a perfect piece of property for development. It's all sand, there's water, there's perfect access. There is no reason this property will not be developed. It just will be developed by right or by OSRD. If you miss the opportunity for OSRD, that's a right that the board has to do. But you will not stop or cannot stop development of a piece of property. It's private property that has rights under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the zoning bylaws of the town of Newbury. So I would just suggest that the crazy making needs to stop. And I've heard a lot from my neighbor, and a lot of crazy making has gone on, and that needs to stop. And some wisdom and some insight needs to happen here with regard to what happens with this property over the next couple of months. Because I'm quite sure it will be developed. It's just in the hands of this board right now to make the appropriate and conscious decisions for the right development. And that's really all I have to say. And I thank you for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur.
Thank you, Arthur. And actually, Arthur, I do want to kind of reiterate what you said. A property owner does have the right to develop the land and to do what they can within the appropriate regulations and bylaws of a community. You're absolutely right. There is going to be one of two things happening here. We understand that. And what the board has not done throughout all of this process that we've had an opportunity to share many wonderful evenings is to actually contemplate the actual purpose and intent of the ORD. And so the board is doing that right now. And, you know, they're weighing, well,
that's great. That's great.
And that is that it's a helpful exercise, because there were many times when the applicant was coming before us to say, which do you want? Do you want this or do you want that? You know, we're not in the position to tell you what we want or what we don't want. You as the applicant for us and say, this is what we want to do, X, Y, Z. And that was kind of, a lot of this was going on for a long, long time. So I think we're at a point right now where this board needs to kind of digest this conversation, needs to digest the information, the calculations that have been put before, have to digest whether they feel the purpose and the intent is appropriate, or whether conventional subdivision is the way that this property should be developed. And I think that's where we're at tonight. And it's, you know, it's an arduous process, but I think it's actually
It
a
is.
good process that we've had this discussion tonight.
Yeah.
Just how frustrated people might be in the process. It's what needed to happen. So I'm glad that it has happened. I'm glad that Larry started the conversation to say, these are my concerns with this as an OSRD. And you're getting kind of a feel from where the board is with that. And so I think that's where we're at. Larry, would you agree?
Yeah, and I just add one thing, Pete. I don't think it's a binary choice between an OSRD and a definitive subdivision. If we find that this OSRD is inappropriate, it doesn't mean any OSRD would be inappropriate for this property. I just think there's an awful lot. The biggest problem you have, it's not the acreage, but the shape of the lots. And you got a lot of activity going on in that front piece, and it's, I don't know, I'm not, you know, but I'm just being candid. I'm trying to share my reservations.
Yeah, that's always been your position for quite some time. Yeah.
But the activity in the front, I believe, is the whole issue.
What I want to do is I just want to kind of keep this as a discussion. So just ask.
Sure, of course, of course.
I see that Marcus has his hand up, and Marcus, is there something new that you want to contribute to the discussion? Thanks.
Yeah, strictly with what Larry had to say. Larry, I'd love for you to go deeper on what you had to say there, but the idea with OSRD is to make it as compact as possible so there's as much open space as possible, and there would be no other way to do it but then how we did it. The back piece, as Martha had mentioned to me numerous times, was hallowed property. Please don't go out back. We stayed out front. There are no trees. There is grass. There's 3 to 5% slopes. It's all beach sand and cow sand, rapid absorption material. We don't cross wetlands. We keep it very compact. That's what it's all about, is taking properties, pulling them all back and leave it as much open as possible instead of plucking houses all over the 17 acres. So Larry, if you could come back at that and help me with what you had to say on shaper lots, you know, we're down to 11, 12, 13, 14,000 square foot lots. So Larry, if you could help me again more with that, because I guess I'm missing something there.
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
I'm not quite sure what the question is, you know.
I think that what Mr. DePiero means is when you had said that, you know, with regard to the front development, and you had indicated that you didn't like the shape of lots, but I think.
Oh, not the shape of the lots.
There, that's what he was thinking. You mean the number of lots that we show on the OSRD.
Yeah, perhaps I misspoke. I don't know that I said shape of the lots.
Yeah, I think that, no, I don't know that you did either. And I
Yes.
apologize for saying, I meant that's what Mark thinks you were saying. So he was asking you if there was an alternative shape. I believe what you were saying is that you thought potentially there were too many lots in the open space, and that would be the divergence between what the plan shows currently and what could be potential for an alternative.
I think it is awfully dense for that, yes.
And I think that the reason for Mr. DePiero's level of, if you will, number of units is based on a fiscal need. There's a certain price you pay for all of the development, for the septic system, for the lots, for the property itself, for the roadway. And that drives the fact that you need to develop it for a certain number.
I mean, I will say this, and I hope I'm not overstepping things here, but I mean, I do think that property lends itself to a condominium form of ownership, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that would require an OSRD, would it not?
I can do a condominium with a conventional plan. So condominium is simply a form of ownership. It has nothing to do with the actual layout. I can just make all the lots held in common by a condominium. It's
I
just
mean,
that the viability of it with big lots like that, it's not worth it.
You know, honestly, the yield plan you submitted with this is a condominium form of ownership. I mean, there's all those, I don't want to, all those imaginative lot lines, okay, which is something that gave everyone pause, sort of disappears if you start thinking in terms of a condominium ownership. but I'm probably really overstepping what, my bounds for this particular meeting. The chairman is giving me the evil eye here, so.
Let's pull it back in.
Yeah.
I think we've had a very good discussion tonight. I think that there's information for the board to review, to digest. And I think the developer has a feel for what we had to look at with regards to our purpose and intent. And so I think I'd like to offer an opportunity to continue this hearing. And I would entertain a motion once I have an idea of what our time schedule looks like, Martha.
Well, I will try one more time to screen share. I don't have any great faith that this will happen, but no, I'm still getting a stop share.
Okay.
Screen sharing is paused. I have no idea why that's happening.
That's okay. It might have just been the way things were logged on.
But in terms of the schedule, again, we've got essentially four public hearings scheduled for the 3rd.
That's the 17th.
So we continued. We've got 3 Newburyport Turnpike on the 17th, and we've continued the AL Prime to March 17th.
Okay, that's basically a draft decision to be reviewed. That's looking
right.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to the 17th of March at 7:15.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
On the motion, is there any discussion? Larry?
No discussion.
Okay, George, any discussion?
No discussion.
Leslie, any discussion?
No.
Woody, any discussion?
No.
Mary, any discussion? I might have lost Mary. On the motion, Larry, how say you?
Yes.
George, how say you?
Yes.
Leslie, how say you?
Yes.
Woody, how say you?
Yes.
All right, the chair is in favor as well. So we will continue this hearing for the 17th of March at 7:15. I appreciate everyone's participation and conversation. Thank you. Good. All right, let me go back to our agenda.
Good night.
Good night now. Thank you.
Night.
Take me a second to get that. I'm swapping. Okay, so last we have as our public hearings is a site plan review, new office building, site contract storage, 84 Boston Road, map R36, lot 23A. K&R Construction Company owner, Sled Road LLC, Kevin Whitney and Ryan Greenwich, managers, continued from January 20th, 2021. Kevin or Chris, do you have any new materials to present to us since our last meeting?
I do. Let me share my screen.
See, I need to, is it your desktop that you'll be doing it from?
Yes, please.
All right, let's see if that works.
There we go.
Want to make that a little bit larger if you can, Chris? Thanks.
Yep. Just trying to find the right page to zoom to here.
Have to go out?
All right, so at the last conservation hearing, not last night, but a few weeks ago, we had made some plan revisions based on their comments. We pulled the wall a little bit further away from the wetlands in this northerly edge of the parking lot here. We had added another row of stones to the top of the wall to kind of serve as a barrier. We got rid of the guardrail. We added a fence along the top of the wall, which was requested by the Conservation Commission. Other than that, not much changed. I do need to add some spot grades out front here just to kind of show that we're cutting that area back. Let me go to the grading sheet.
So Chris, was this a different plan than it was last night before conservation?
This should be the same plan. I believe it should be the same.
Maybe it's just that the first page didn't show trailers and other materials being stored on site.
Yeah, that plan that shows the trailers and everything is more of just a kind of a supplemental plan for the Conservation Commission wanted to see. Wasn't part of the plan set. I need to add some couple spot grades out front here. We had showed, I think at the last planning meeting, we had talked about adding a kind of a berm out front here to kind of screen the site a little bit from the road. We had some plantings out front on top of this berm. Other than that, I think that's really about it for changes as of the moment.
Yes. So there's no additional comments other than the comments on the drawing?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Martha, I didn't ask you. I apologize. I don't know if I asked the last hearing if you had any comments. Do you have any additional comments or materials since our last visit?
No, I mean, I think it's very helpful actually to have the plan showing the trailers and the storage on the site, the exterior storage, because that was something that I think we'd been given the impression that there wouldn't be anything on, stored outside.
You want to pop that up, Chris?
I may need a minute on that, but I will try to. Let me
okay. All right.
Let me find it on my work computer here. See if I can bring it over.
As you're doing that, I'm going to ask any of the board members if they have any questions or comments since our last get together. Larry, do you have any questions or comments, sir?
I'm told that Conservation Commission is looking for peer review. Is that true?
Yeah. So let me try to give a recap. Last night, Conservation asked for is looking probably for a little bit of guidance because they're not very comfortable with a couple components of the project, and so they've suggested peer review to help them with their decision-making process. And so Conservation pretty much is going to be waiting for some insight from peer review. I think the applicant's going to then decide whether or not they want to participate in the peer review process, and then that will then determine where Conservation goes with their component of this project.
Okay, and I understand that there was a plan. Well, I shouldn't say I understand. I have it right here. Show a plan showing outdoor trailer storage. Did I miss that? I was not aware that any outdoor storage was contemplated.
That was news to us. That came from the previous discussion with Conservation, and we asked. I think we asked Kevin if there's going to be materials, because our understanding there was not going to be anything stored exteriorly. That's what we've been told.
From the beginning, I've always been parking, trucks and trailers on the property.
I think it was the fittings and castings and hard materials that had never been discussed with planning.
It was my understanding, I was asked if I was going to be storing stone and gravel and dirt products.
I guess for clarification, it's materials, outdoor materials, not exterior materials. But I think we had this conversation last board meeting. And so that's why I think having this drawing helps us to understand what the intention is. So the intention is that there will be pipe fittings, castings, and other hard materials stored on site. And that was moved from our last visit to this visit, from against the wall to now to the exterior of the property line. So things were moved from our last meeting.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right.
So these trailers that are shown, are those storage trailers, the equipment trailers? They're gonna, I mean, there are always going to be 6 of them there, or just it's an area where They might be temporary storage.
They're trailers, like equipment trailers that you'd move like a backhoe or a bulldozer on,
Okay,
something like that. Just a flat deck trailer. We have several of them. And then we have a couple of the dump trailers that you move stone and gravel in.
Mhm.
And that's just to depict, because conservation, they kept asking why we need so much space. So we tried to show the amount of space that you'd need to pull a trailer out and turn and then navigate the property. Because they would like me to move the wall further away from the wetland.
Yeah, and please don't misunderstand. I'm not suggesting you weren't being forthright with us.
Okay.
I just didn't appreciate the point.
Larry, were there any other comments or concerns at this time, just from what's been discussed?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. George, sir, any comments or concerns from what has been discussed?
Yes, and the trailers, they show 6. Is that just a representation? Could it be 12, 10, 9?
Currently, we own 6, so we showed 6.
All right. Very well.
Thank you, George. Leslie, questions, comments, concerns?
No, I have nothing right now.
Okay. Woody, questions, comments, concerns?
I followed along with not last night's, but the meeting before with COMCOM, and noticed as well that the trailers were added, or another sheet. I went through my packet as I watched the meeting, and I didn't have the sheet with the trailers and the fits piles and so forth, but I understand how it could have been added on for COMCOM to show the space. But I do have one question about the trailers. They all have, all the proposed trailer parking, everything has wheels.
Yes, everything has wheels.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question for now. Thank you.
Mary, any questions or comments?
Just a quick clarification. Okay, so you said you have 6 trailers, you show 6 trailers. Does that mean you're going to have more? You might have more, you could have more, or is this at 6?
Currently, currently I don't see the need for more. In
But
10
what's the
years
answer
from now-
to I'm sorry, it's just getting late. So does that, you could possibly have more than 6?
we
Kevin?
could, yes.
Okay, just want to be sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
And I guess I'll hold my questions and comments to the end. Martha, do you have any new information that's been submitted from the public at all, or any letters?
Received one email today from, from Harmony Wilson, who runs the Marrowhawk children's program just on the opposite side of Sled Road. And I did forward that to the board. She has some concerns, both about the impact of construction activity on the programming for the kids, as well as some concerns. I don't know, she was going to try to attend. I think she came in. I don't see the list right now, so I don't know if she's still here and would like to say anything.
All right. Okay. So I have a couple questions, or a couple comments. I think we're going to need to have some guidance, or we're going to have a little patience to see what COMCOM comes up with, and after they've had their peer review, to help that commission make a determination, which will then help us to see if this actually goes further. And Chris, this is kind of a design question I want to ask you. So we have an entrance and an exit, or two points of entry to this property, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Yep. And we're creating a new point of entry, which is going to be directly across from the exiting point of the transfer station.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so that's directly across the street is where that exit is for the transfer station, because that's where the guardrail is, right?
Guardrail is right.
Okay, yep. So directly across. And the entrance is not, there's distance between the entrance for the transfer station and for the other entrance, correct?
Yeah, the southerly entrance to our site is here. The transfer station other exit is, it is just off the site, just off the plan here. I see
So
the guardrail kind of curves around, so it's
Right. So where your cursor is now, that's the entrance into the transfer station, and the other component is the exit for the transfer station. So as people would be exiting the transfer station, they would be having pretty potentially oncoming traffic from your site. Is that right? Because that's destined to be an exit.
talking about coming out of the northerly entrance of the transfer station.
Yeah. So as people are leaving the transfer station, right where your cursor was, right? Move it up the other way.
This way.
Right. That's the exit for the transfer station.
Okay.
If people are exiting the transfer station, they're going to be facing oncoming traffic coming off your property, correct? Off that site.
Plus, that is possible, correct. It's unlikely, but possible, yep.
Okay. I have no idea, what the volume of traffic is going to be. I've heard that it's going to be morning stuff and afternoon stuff, but people are going to be coming and going, and that's going to be something new, because as it is right now, people would have to look to the left for traffic as they exit the transfer station, and now they have to look to the right to watch traffic coming down Boston Road, because people do tend to pick up speed as they go over those railroad tracks. So now they're going to have to look straight and look for traffic coming at them, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
So they're
possible.
so they're gonna have to do a third traffic stop. So I hadn't thought of it until I just was looking at the site and said, well, so now we're creating a potential area of conflict by having that entrance or exit, as it's been designed, for people leaving the transfer site. So I'm wondering, do you in fact need 2 points? And this is going to go in two directions. Do you need 2 points of access to this site? Because the other component of this is you have to take down a big chunk of the right of way from, is it almost 28 or 30 feet at the top of the hill?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to take that down to bring it down to 24. Does it make more sense to leave that component of the right of way undisturbed, have the retaining wall that would be constructed on your property line? Visually, there'd be no impact from what the roadway looks like, bless you, Woody. And we wouldn't be having a potential site conflict for people leaving the transfer station, or having to worry about trucks negotiating through there, or people coming down the road. So how necessary, Kevin, is the 2 points of entry for the site? Is this site workable with 1 point?
May I comment on that? So
good question.
We really would like to have the 2 driveway accesses because of the tractor trailers. It's easy to pull in one, go around the building, and say, pull out the other one. And may I ask, what are the hours of operation at the transfer station?
7 to 3.
So typically our trucks will be leaving
I understand
by 7, and probably arriving after 3. So there'll be very little interaction.
Right, that's as long as this site stays your site. If
Yes.
this site changes property, and you mentioned that last night that the property could change hands, that's what made me think, well, if this property changes hands in, let's say, 2 years, and some other industry goes in there, and we've now created a potential traffic conflict, I'd rather address it now than for it to be a problem. And if we're talking about changing the architecture and landscape of the road significantly to bring it from 30 down to 24 to meet the needs of what you want to do inside your property, would it make more sense to leave the right of way the way the right of way is? That way we don't have to go through a hearing, we don't have to activate that whole process. The road will stay the way it is. Visually, the roadway won't see what's going on with your operations because you'll be behind a knoll that is already at height 28 or 30. And so you're going to be working at 24. So you're going to have this anywhere from 4 to 6 foot barrier. And it would somewhat hide the appearance of the building, not completely, but it would blend it in a little more and maybe make it more visually conducive with the environment that's there now. Because otherwise, what you're doing is you're basically flattening a bunch of earth and nature to bring it down to 2024. You're going to open up a right of way and alter that, and then also create a potential traffic conflict. So there's a couple different aspects of this not until you said last night the property might change hands did I start to think that I'm planning now that the property is going to change hands. So what do we have to do?
Yeah.
What do we have to do to think about that? Because if there's a different business in here that has different types of equipment that's doing different things and has, maybe, I don't know, an ice cream factory goes in there, who knows what, and all of a sudden there's this huge amount of access and traffic, going in and off the site. Did we plan appropriately? Did this board plan appropriately? And so I'm trying to think long-term and make it work with you. So that's why I'm opening this discussion up.
We would really like to have 2 driveways. I really don't want to redesign the plan. I mean, it doesn't have to line up exactly to the town transfer station, but that just made sense to us with the design, just to line them up.
Well, either way, it's going to be we are going to create a potential traffic conflict there. Even if you put it up 10 feet, you're still going to want places for your equipment. And so it's going to have to be on one end of the other. And, you're going to bump into problems with the wetlands, I think, if you go in another direction. As it is, there's a lot going on this site. So I'm trying to see if there's this flexibility from your concept so that, it might address some of the thoughts that I've just kind of articulated. And maybe you don't even have to answer this now. Maybe it's a design question. You go back and you say with Chris, hey, listen, should we look at this a different way? And maybe it's best not to answer it now and just to think about it. But yeah, Chris.
Can I chime in for a second? If this site ever changes hands someday, wouldn't it require site plan approval for a change of use? Would someone who comes and buys this property someday from Kevin 30 years down the line, they want to put something new in here, wouldn't that require site plan review down the line where you could ultimately, someone comes in and wants to change this building and change the site around, they may want to move the driveway themselves. They may want to move it down slope. They may want to change things. But
what if they don't want to change anything, Chris, and it becomes a facility that has a lot more in and out activity?
But they would still require site plan approval though, wouldn't they?
Martha, would they require a site review or just a permit for occupancy?
I think if they weren't doing anything that triggered our site plan review process, if it was just a new owner coming in and they were going to keep everything exactly as it is, it wouldn't, I don't believe that it would be going through
Change in use?
any change. I mean, say it were some small allowed manufacturing process that went in here, but there was no change in parking, there was no change in impervious surface, there was no change in the building size or footprint. Those are all things that require site plan review. So if they were planning to use it as is, I don't think it would be going through any process. If it were a use that required a special permit for some reason, then it would be going through process.
So I'm trying to avoid a potential problem. And so that's why we're having the discussion. Yeah. So maybe think about it. Because we can't, I don't think we're going to be acting on this tonight because we're going to wait for direction to see what's coming from conservation. And if in fact you decide that maybe it makes more sense just to have one entrance exit, then we've kind of addressed the whole berm, tree warden, public hearing for removal of trees, that whole series of dominoes that will take place.
So it was my understanding, was it three or 4 weeks ago that we had our last meeting, that a decision was being drafted.
A decision has been started, but it is not completed.
And
so our hearing is still open. We're still accepting information. It hasn't been closed. And that's one of the reasons you don't close it, is so you can, if something comes up, and things are fluid right now.
And so can this process not come to a completion without conservation coming to a completion? I mean, I thought they were two separate entities.
They are two separate entities. However, if one stops and says we're not going to go forward, it brings a little bit of caution to this board to say, what are we going to do if conservation has reservations about it?
So if conservation does not grant me approval and I have to go to Mass DEP,
you're going to be delayed, and it's going to be an expense. That's why having the reason for the discussion last night was to have a peer review say, hey, this does make sense and it can work. And this is the guidance to give you that. It wasn't to be an obstacle. It might seem as though it's an obstacle.
No, I understand, Peter. What I'm saying is that also stops planning board from moving forward.
I think it gives us caution, would it not, Martha?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concern is that, say the planning board were to approve, render a decision that approves the project as shown, and then there's some significant change that comes out of the Conservation Commission process, then you'd have to come back before the board. If the change is big enough, then it would require another public hearing. So that, that's actually potentially a greater delay for you than allowing the two processes to run in parallel and stay open.
All right, I just feel like we keep going back and forth each meeting. Well, Conscom wants this and planning board wants this, but we can't do this without planning board. And we're not getting anywhere. It's been over 6 months.
Well, it's not so much that, it's what Martha just articulated to you. That if there's a significant change because one board says you need to change something and we've approved it, you're going to have to come back and you're going to have to reinvent your wheel again.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not an obstacle. It's trying to make sure that you get to the point of fruition.
I understand.
Okay. So, I want to see if the board members have any comments after that lively discussion. Larry.
No, I just add, I think under the circumstances, I certainly understand your frustration, but it would be the exception rather than the rule for us to go forward and issue a decision while you've got Concom pending, because they could, depending on what they come up with, it could dramatically change everything.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Thank you. We could probably stop screen sharing just so we can see where the board's at. Thanks very much, Chris. George, any comments?
Yeah, as I see it, there's the same road would be an entrance and an exit. For large trailers, would it make any sense to have separate entry, one in and one out?
The reason why I'm not dedicating one or the other is if there's a piece of equipment, say, parked in one driveway, we can still enter the other one. So there's no truck staging in the roadway. The idea is never have our trucks in the public road. They just come right onto the property.
Okay, so they'd both be dual ways, either way.
Yes. I believe they're 24 feet wide, Chris?
The southerly entrance is 20 for the trucks. But the other entrance is 24.
Well, my personal preference would be one road in and one road out, but that's something else for the board to discuss generally.
Mm-hmm. that would be that is a modification that we could make. That's not a major issue.
Good.
Thank you, George. Leslie.
Actually, I agree with George. I think I can see where Kevin's coming from as far as like, not idling a big vehicle out on the road waiting for entry. But I think it would become confusing as far as traffic is concerned if it isn't a one-way in and one-way out. That, you never know what direction it's going to go in. And if the turn is that important, why is the turn different in one direction than it is in the other direction? So I look at it as like one way in and one way out, and that deletes the problems as far as even like on-site parking for any clients or anybody that's happens to be coming in to do business. That's my basic concern. I was surprised. I didn't realize they were going to put the trailers on the site the way that they are. But if they're all on wheels and they can be moved out, I don't see that that's a problem.
Thanks, Les. Woody.
Well, some of Peter's comments have brought up some points. Watching last night's Concom meeting and the mention of possible sale of the property in the future down the road brought up some points. I understand what you're trying to do here. I said this in our last meeting. And I looked at the removal of that berm and the right-of-way work. I looked at that as only a benefit to that 24-foot wide two-way driveway. But now that this discussion's taken place, as George says, if one was one way where the berm is, where the right-of-way work is, and we didn't do all that right-of-way work, and we left it alone as is, it would act as a screening. It would, if that was a one-way in there, it would be enter only, and then you wouldn't need that line of sight to be safe coming out of that driveway. You'd be further down over the knoll. You'd be away from the exit of the dump. And it's all just something that we should think about. You still have stuff to do with conservation. They directed that, and I watched the other 3 meetings that you've been in with them, and it seems they have some genuine concerns here. And they're even talking of if you were to have to move away from the wetlands in the back there, that you might lose a bay to your garage or the building. And so there's a lot of things up in the air, and I think we should wait to see what happens in the future with Concom, and also give you, as the applicant, fair time to think some of this stuff over and look at your design and your plan and to what some of us have said, and we should meet again, obviously. But just you might look at this tomorrow and think of something that could work for you, and it would be different, and it would resolve a lot of these concerns people have had, conservation and what Peter was talking of, the berm. And the trail storage was never shown to us before I picked this packet up yesterday or today. And I couldn't find it when I followed the Concom meeting along, and it is what it is, and that's fine. But you could still make that work as trailer storage and not disrupt the right of way. So I would just like you to think on some of the stuff that you like we said, like it's been said, we don't need to jump on a decision here today because there's other concerns with conservation. So that's all for now.
Thanks, Woody. Mary?
I think it's important that Kevin have some time to think over what everyone's been saying, and I do agree with George and Woody. I think that these problems can be solved. And I think Kevin can come up with solutions and we'll all get this done.
Okay, I'm just gonna go a little bit out of order because I see Harmony. I know that you weren't here and you're back here, and I don't know if you wanted to say something. I just saw your hand go up. And this would be under the public comments. And if you wouldn't mind your name and address, please. Thanks.
Sure. Actually, this is Harmony Wilson. I live 1282 Broadway in Haverhill. So it's very interesting. I've been here since 7:15, so to see how other towns work. Thank you for giving me a minute, and apologies again that I am sort of late to this process. I have done some homework and watched all the prior planning board meetings, and I did attend a Concom last night. Once again, I'm on the board for Marahawk Nature School. Currently, we have about 10 kids there. Our programs can run up to 20 or 30 kids a day pre-pandemic. You know, we did have some concerns, but through my homework, I think some of them have been addressed in prior meetings that I've watched. It seems like the truck traffic shouldn't be a big issue for us. Our programs are usually drop off at 9 a.m. with pickup between 1 and 3, which will be sort of in between Kevin's hours. So that works out nicely. The light pollution, I know that the plan had changed to take away the pole lighting, which will benefit us, which we appreciate that as well. Our programs are during the day, but we do occasionally have family events at night, and also occasional campouts as well. You know, unfortunately, we didn't jump in the process for the storage project. We just sort of felt that property was owned, there was a project, we just stick to our side, they have ours. The noise has been incredibly impactful. And we do have a lot of concerns about the amount of ledge on this current project and how that will impact our programs. So as this moves forward and Kevin gets his permits and so forth, we would just like to know when the heavy blasting and any hammer drills and so forth will be going on, just so, you know, if we have to move some programs, or we just want to be able to work with him to make sure we don't have a group of kids on blasting day. And then also with clear cutting, we, you know, also understand the nature. This is a very rugged piece of property, and to make it work for his business, there will be a lot of clear cutting. But if there was any way to get additional screening on the sled road side, whether it's leaving a tree strip on that side, or planting something, that would be incredibly helpful as well. I do like this potential idea of leaving that knoll. You know, I did know the landscaping plan is very minimal, which we think is great. The more native the species are and how, you know, it could potentially blend into the existing area, I think would be helpful. You know, yes, there is a transfer station down the street, but if you look to the other side on the Greenbelt property, we like to pretend we're back deep in the woods. Kind of ignore the transfer station. So any native plants that could be left or planted, we feel would be incredibly helpful. And we also, you know, are in favor of Kevin's sign for the building, reusing a piece of granite or whatever kind of rock comes, you know, we think would look nice blended into that area. So sorry to drone on. I've been with you guys for a long time, so I just want to make sure, you know, our items of concern are just read into the record, that once again, that, you know, yes, there is a school, Marahawk Nature School. We just lease property from Greenbelt next door, and we have been there for a few years. So I think that is all that I wanted to read. Oh, one other mention, that road, people fly down that road. I heard in one of your prior meetings, there was talk about perhaps the town putting some signage, just, you know, turning trucks or something just to indicate that there will be more traffic. I think that will only be beneficial. You know, we don't have lots of cars parked there throughout the day, but with parent pickup and drop off, there could easily be 15, 20 cars. Sometimes people are parking on the edges of the road just to do the quick in and out with the children, and anything to slow down the traffic would be greatly appreciated. So with that, that's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your participation in your comments. They're appreciated. Hey, Chris, going back to conservation, is that on the 9th?
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay. And that was basically to make the decision with regards to peer review, selection, all that sort of stuff, with the hope that would there be a repeat visit on the 23rd or was it the 30th? I don't have my notes in front of me.
I think we're on for the 9th.
Yep.
Just to kind of get an idea of who they're going to hire or give us suggestions or what the cost will be, and we'll kind of decide from there whether we want to go that route or just almost have the board vote no at that point, because they clearly at the moment don't like what they see. So we're kind of weighing our options there.
So what I'm trying to find out is, coming back to us, I think if we have a kind of a direction from conservation and you have an opportunity to think about all the different things that we've talked about and maybe what conservation has talked about, when the best time for you to revisit with us is. And I'm wondering if the 17th is the best, or does it make sense to wait till April because that way you'll have more concrete direction. Because I don't think you want to throw the towel onto this thing, Kevin. Maybe you do, I don't know. If you appeal it to DEP, you're going to be tied up for a while. If you can work with the system and see if there's a way to mitigate concerns, but that's going to take a little bit of time. That is going to take time.
I understand the conservation is going to take time. I didn't know that I would also be held up on this end as well. I thought they were two separate.
Again, you heard what Larry said. And you heard
I understand now.
Okay, so what we're trying to do is we're just trying to make sure that if we're going to keep things moving in a forward trajectory, the best time, because you can come back to us and we'll say, okay, looks good, but we're not going to make a decision. We can draft some, continue drafting, but that might change based upon what happens over here.
I understand.
Yeah. So back to Chris. I thought there was a second date floated with conservation, and I know there was a little bit of pushback, but what was the second date, the 23rd or the 30th? I forget. My notes say the 30th, but I'm not sure if that's accurate.
If they said the 30th, but that seems wrong. That's the 5th Tuesday of the month. I would think it's the 23rd, but I don't know for certain. But
I think the 23rd, we're going to be doing bylaws, so maybe it would be the 23rd. And if it were the 23rd, would it make sense to come back to us on the 7th of April? Because we meet on the, let's see, in March, we meet on the 3rd and the 17th.
Can we go for the 17th of March? And if we determined by the...
Is on the 30th.
Say again, Leslie?
Conservation is on the 30th.
It's on the 30th.
Yep.
Yeah. So if that's the case, maybe it makes sense to do the 7th.
Can we request the 17th of March? And if we can't make it, we can continue. I guess it depends on what happens on the 9th of March, I guess.
You can, but you're going to be last in the arduous process of what took place. What happened tonight is going to be repeated, plus one other public hearing.
That happens at every meeting for us, so it's nothing new.
But I'm talking about us.
It's only 10 o'clock. So it's still early.
So you want to try for the 17th with the understanding that we might be looking at the 7th?
Yes, we would like to try for the 17th and see how that goes.
So Martha, what time would we be getting to them at the 17th? I just want to be realistic because I got to be fair to everybody here.
So we've got, oh goodness, what's happened to it? Hold on a sec.
We've got Prime and
Newburyport Turnpike.
and 105.
Right. Yeah, we've got 105 AL Prime and 3 Newburyport Turnpike continuance that night.
Is that the night we're meeting early?
No, we're meeting early on March 3rd, which isn't to say we couldn't meet early on the 17th as well.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we meet early on the 17th? Does that make sense? And what we'll do is we'll put these guys in first. Put them in at 7 o'clock or 6:45.
Yeah, 6:45, start at 6:30.
Okay, that's what we'll do. And if it doesn't work, we can do the back end of our meeting first, because we don't get to do the back end of our meeting until the end. And if you're ready and you have direction from conservation by then, which I don't think you're going to have it by then, unless you do speedy work and get a consultant, in a week and get something going.
We might not, we probably won't, but we just at least give us the option, I guess. That's all we ask.
All right, so I will accept a motion to continue this hearing. Hold on, let me just pull the board real quick. Are you okay with 6:45?
Yes.
Okay, George?
Yes.
Okay, Leslie?
Yes.
Woody?
Yes, that's fine. It's 10 o'clock now, so.
Yep, Mary?
Yes.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing for 6:45 on the 17th.
Just cutting into my corned beef and cabbage, but that's okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any, on the motion, any discussion, Larry?
No discussion.
Discussion, George?
No.
Discussion, corned beef lady?
No.
Okay, discussion, Woody?
No.
Discussion, Mary?
No.
But on the question, where are we? Larry? How do you
I
say?
just remembered it was St. Patrick's Day, but yes.
Okay. George?
Yes.
Okay, corned beef?
Yes.
All right, Woody?
Yeah.
All right, Mary?
Yep.
Okay, guys, we'll see you then. Thanks so much. Hope it all goes smooth between then, and appreciate your participating in the conversation.
Thank you for your time and your comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Chris.
All right. Back to our agenda. We took care of our subdivision, old business, proposed zoning amendments, special permit regs. Where are we now?
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Sweet dreams, sir.
Good night, George.
Bye, George.
Bye-bye.
Hi, George.
George.
Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Special permit regs.
So special permit regs, I have forwarded those to the select board for their meeting on the 23rd with the request that they be referred back to the planning board for public hearing. So there, I did have a brief discussion with Alicia and JR today, and Tracy, to just kind of explain what it's all about and why, why it's being recommended to do that now. I think there was a little bit of concern that it might get into, some substantive discussions about special permits. So, I just explained that it's really procedural and to give us criteria.
So that'll be coming back. We weren't able to do anything because we've been very full with lot dimensions. How about our regulations? Where are we with our guidance for rules and regs?
Right, so it's really kind of twofold. I did forward to the board an example from Newburyport, actually, their zoning board rules and regs, which covers a lot of ground. And that may be more than the board really wants to take up right now in terms of rules and regs for us. I know the concern has largely been submissions, submission deadlines, and making sure that we get things in a timely fashion. I know that the Conservation Commission has put out some guidance for people in terms of submissions, and we could do something as simple as that right now.
That makes sense to have guidance recommendations, and we just have that as our operating housekeeping. Is that fine to do, Brian? Say yes.
My preference is usually to have them as formal rules and regulations so that if they ever come into play in a material way, you can rely upon them.
Okay. So
if it's guidance, it's
okay.
It's just a little softer.
All right. So the quickest ways to get to our rules and regulations to make Martha's life somewhat easier, so stuff doesn't get dropped on her at 3:30 on a day before the hearing.
Which then means it gets dropped on you guys at about 3:35.
Right.
I'm looking for assistance in helping Martha to get to that threshold, folks. Larry?
Yeah. I mean, we had, what works for you, Martha? I'm going to put it back on you.
Well,
Sorry. We had some very simple language that you and I had looked at. I mean, if that
Right.
works for you in the short term, fine. If you need something more comprehensive, then we're going to need more time on that.
Right, so I guess, and maybe I'll put this question to Brian. I mean, if we were to start with adopting rules and regulations regarding submission requirements and then expand those to other requirements in the future, is that something that makes sense to do?
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to necessarily piecemeal it so that you wait until you have everything covered, because you'll never, you may never get to that point, for one thing.
Right.
But also, it's just an arduous process. All the little finer points that you're going to have to consider meeting after meeting after meeting in order to get to that end point where you finally adopt a comprehensive set will mean that you're operating without one during that entire time.
Right.
So I think, as soon as you get the one thing you need the most, adopt it, and then move on to the next thing that you need to have the next highest priority on your list.
Okay. So I think we could put that language together and get that done.
Okay. Do you want to try to do it so that we have it in place for our next gathering?
We can try.
Okay. Do we want to circulate a draft beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody should have a chance to review it.
All right.
And then discuss it at the meeting.
So what you will do is basically streamline, go with what you and Larry worked on and streamline the presentation from Newburyport.
I think getting into that, I mean, I looked at the Newburyport one again, and that is pages and pages, and it's very comprehensive. And I think it would take a long time to actually iron that out for us. So I think right now it'd really be focusing on sort of the submission deadlines, because that seems to be the thing that keeps coming up as an issue, both in terms of getting drafts in a timely fashion to review for applications and getting materials in time for you all to have a chance to review it before the meetings.
Martha, I have the one paragraph version that we looked at. Do you want me to just read it at this point? Would that be helpful?
Sure, if you want to. I actually had it ready to pull up, but since I can't seem to do that tonight, if you can read it, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just entitled Town of Newbury Planning Board Agenda Policy. Reads as follows: preparation of agenda for board meetings, the agenda for a meeting will be prepared by the town planner after conferring with the chair and/or other members of the board. The agenda will close at blank PM on the blank day before a regular bi-monthly meeting of the board, or the blank day before any other meeting, excluding Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays. No changes to the agenda shall take place thereafter, except with the approval of the chair and only if permitted under the open meeting law. All documents reasonably anticipated in support of any matter on the agenda shall be submitted by an applicant/petitioner before the close of the agenda, except with the approval of the chair and only if permitted under the open meeting law. So the whole idea was to avoid that 3:30 PM dump, the day of the meeting.
Right.
So how comfortable do we feel about filling in those couple blanks that we need?
How comfortable, what? Can you say that again?
Do we feel about filling in those couple blanks that we need? Is that a comfortable framework to start with, Martha?
Yeah, I mean, I thought we reviewed this before and it seemed fine, right?
But we haven't acted on it.
Yeah, we did look at it one other time.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was fine.
I think the only other blank is, since some of our bylaws and rules and regs require that draft applications be submitted. I think we need to get something in there about that.
Okay.
You know, that drafts of any applications need to be submitted for review 2 weeks before the anticipated submission date or something, you know, something along those
Okay.
lines.
So we'll perhaps add that in. We'll circulate that draft, and we can maybe put that into Brian's rules and regs configuration to make everyone happy. And that'll help assist the process. I think it's great.
Sounds good.
Good. Do we have any other business, Martha?
No, I don't think we do.
Oh, no, seriously?
Did you want to make it to
Come
like
on, Martha, come up with something. He's falling asleep, so it's.
All right. Well, that being the case, I want to thank everyone for participating tonight and for hanging in. I'm sorry that they are such long nights, but I would love to entertain a motion.
I so moved that we.
Oh, there's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
And there's a second. Any discussion? Larry, there's no discussion.
No discussion. No.
Woody, there's no discussion. Leslie, there's no discussion. Mary, there's no discussion. Okay, on the motion, Larry, say you.
I say yes.
Woody.
Yes, and thank you and good night, everyone.
Night, Woody.
And Mary.
I am ready to rock and roll and get out of here.
Excellent. Thank you. The chair's in favor of all. Brian, thank you very much. Martha, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
All right.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Pete.
everyone.
Thank you, Martha. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Ladies and germs. Good night.
Good night.
Martha, talk to you again soon. Good to see
Yes.
everybody again.
See you, Brian. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Brian.
Thank you.